Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Luffy make his own world of harem with Tashigi, Hina, and Robin? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Jinouga for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. Prologue. Ace left to become a pirate, a wrong move for him to leave Luffy. Few months after Ace left, Garp, hero of the Marines, has learned of what Ace has done, and has decided to put Luffy into the Marines, fearing that he may follow the footstep of his son or become a pirate who's crazy about becoming a pirate king just like Gold Roger was. Even though Luffy retaliated, he had no choice. Garp was the only family he's got beside Makino. Makino tried to reason with Garp only to fail. I will not let him become like his brother, Ace, he said. Makino had no rights for Luffy, which made her argument with Garp pointless. At first Luffy was shouting, "I'll be a pirate king," while he was training to become a proper marine. The others laugh at the child wanting to become a pirate king, in which the said treasure in Raftel was now believed to be only a myth. Months had passed. Luffy has obeyed yet the orders, the training, yet he still wished to become a pirate. What am I going to do with this kid? Garp sighing. Sengoku laughed at the same time. He was relieved that AD wasn't going in a wrong path. Show him the world. Garp. Sengoku puts his hand on his friend's shoulder and nods. Garp had no other choice but to agree. Garp took Luffy into a ship and sailed. For the first time the kid had smelled the taste of freedom. He was more determined to become a pirate now, but that all changed. Stench of death had taken over. Black clouds of smoke was rising into the sky from a small little town, dead bodies everywhere. His eyes saw things child know. He saw things that no man must see. It was a massacre. A pirate raid, Garp said, gripping into the rails of the ship while Luffy held his coat tightly. Pirates. Luffy, pirates, he said. The boy didn't reply but stood there watching as the Marines saved the few people that had survived from the attack, while others fought the raging fire. Bending down in his knees, Garp held Luffy's shoulders with a tight grip. I'm not gonna say we are the good guys, but neither are they. Not that I don't want you being free like a pirate is, but I don't want you or Ace turning into monsters like that. Do you understand? Luffy nods, hugging his grandpa, crying at the sight he saw. He may have to live with it. I'm gonna become the best admiral there is, Luffy said, few weeks after returning from their trip. Garp. Sengoku said. Pity was in his voice. I made a child look into the aftermath of a raid, Garp said, starting to break. His eyes were now teary. For the good of all, Garp, for the good of all. Sengoku stood beside Garp, both men looking into the window, seeing the trainees train. 8 years later. Luffy was now of age. Under the supervision of his grandpa, Monkey D. Garp, he was instantly promoted into captain and been given a private small ship at his disposal. The ship wasn't his crew, it was simply when he has business to other marine base. To formally celebrate it, the Marines had a graduation ceremony of the people who were instantly chosen as officers. Others were righteous, others because of their mind and ability to think strategy, others because of the strength they showed, and a few others like Luffy who was all of the above. Will I get a crew of my own? Luffy asking his grandpa after the graduation. You can either recruit them, or choose from the graduated Marines, Garp said. Recruit? You mean I can ask a person to join me? Luffy was a bit confused. There are only 3 requirements, and only officers has the ability to do this. 1. That person must have fighting experience. 2. That person must be psychologically normal, meaning that person must not be crazy about anything at all that can harm civilians or disobey direct orders. Well, what's the third? The boy anxiously waited for the third requirements. Their history. If a person has committed a crime, or didn't abide the law, then he or she can't be allowed to join. What if they were forced to do such things? Like their families are in danger or they were simply protecting someone? Then a trial will be held, and it will be up to us to decide if that person can join. I see, Luffy said. Captain Luffy, orders from East Blue headquarters that trouble has stirred up in a place called Shell Town. People saying that Captain Morgan, or rather his son, hurted a woman and a man protected her and hurt the said son in the process. You are immediately needed to that place. Okay, please tell them to prepare my ship. I will set sail to Shell's Town. Yes, sir. Another Marine saluted and ran towards Captain Luffy's ship. Breathing deeply in his quarters, Luffy was quite nervous since it was his first mission as a Marine. Though he may have wanted to have a crew and sailed the seas, he didn't like any one of those who graduated with them. Not hate, or dislike them in a way that he'll not be friends with them, but they're not the type like Ace and Sabo was. I wonder how's Ace doing? Luffy mumbled to himself. Come in, he said, hearing a knock on his door. Captain, we have arrived, the Marine said. Okay. I'll be out in a minute. Ending the conversation, he wore a long-sleeve polo shirt with black stripes, a black necktie, and a long white pants. Of course it's given for him to wear his marine coat with the word justice on its back. With one long breath, he inhaled the fresh sea breeze. People were getting out of his way, respectfully if I may add, behind him a squad of Marines that were ordered to obey his command should things go out of control in Shell's Town. They were carrying a rifle and in their usual non-officer outfit, sleeveless shirt with a cap that says Marines in it. For Luffy, a katana that was in its sheath. Welcome to the 153rd branch of the Marines. My name is Ripper. Luffy was greeted by a Marine that was stationed at the gate's fort. Thank you, Ripper. Where is Captain Morgan? Luffy asked, but Ripper started to sweat a little, hesitating that what may he tell Luffy could hurt him. Leave us, Luffy ordered that squadron on his back. Yes, sir. They all said in unison and entered the fort. Now, will you tell me? He said calmly, not a hint of deceit on his tone. The man gives him his trust. Well, Captain Morgan is running Shell's Town. In the reports he blames his son Helmeppo. Still being a teenager, he's abusing his power as son of the captain. Worse, the same could be said about his father. He started shaking some more. Why not report it to HQ? Luffy asked. All of our reports has to go to Captain Morgan first. Since Shell's Town isn't a good target for a pirate's raid, Captain Morgan has nothing to do except do what he wants, he replied. Well, what about this man that protected this woman? He's quite famous here in East Blue. He's a pirate hunter. Luffy walked towards the entrance, which Ripper followed. He's three-sword style user, Roronoa Zoro, Ripper added. Yes, I've heard his name a few times. As they walk, Luffy spotted a man tied to a practice dummy. That's him? Zoro? The captain added. It's him, all right. A young blonde man walked past Luffy. He was holding a whip. Care to join me? He said with an annoying smile. You must be Helmeppo, Luffy said. Yeah, and who do you think you are? Captain Monkey D. Luffy said. Helmeppo turned pale upon hearing the word monkey, for there was only two monkeys in the marine. One was Garp the hero and the other, Luffy, his grandson. And the rumored to be next hero after Garp. Monkey. Helmeppo stuttered, but a hand was put on his shoulder. Who cares, monkey or not, he's just a little boy. The man who said that has an axe hand and a metal jaw guard. Captain Morgan, just from this moment I can clearly see that you are already defected the Marines, Luffy said. What did you say, punk? Insulted, he motioned his axe hand to swing. It hit the ground with brute force, causing a little crater upon it. A smirk on his face, seeing us how he had crushed the hero's grandson, he started laughing but soon realized that he missed. Not only that, but the boy was nowhere to be seen. Where did he? Before the man could simply finish his sentence, he suddenly collapsed, as if his body was shut down so suddenly that a loud noise echoed as Captain Morgan hit the ground. Men! Please arrest Captain Morgan and take his son into custody. Luffy's squadron picked up the unconscious Captain Morgan and his son, taken into the ship. Ripper, as a captain of the Marines, you are now in charge of this fort, Luffy said. Ripper was shocked but nods with him. I won't let you down, sir. He saluted and the others Marines surrounded him. All were happy that one of their friend, one they knew too well, will lead them. Zoro was cut down, his swords brought to him. Luffy looked at the swords. Two of them were well made but not enough to be named, but the last one, the one with a white grip, now that was a sword. Roronoa Zoro, I hereby challenge you to a duel. Zoro grabs his sword and walks his way towards the exit, or the great Roronoa Zoro is scared of a young Marine. Zoro halts his movement and looks back to him. Did I hurt your pride, Zoro? Luffy blinked his eyes, and once they were open he was greeted by two swords rushing towards him. Oops! Luffy managed to draw his blade, pure black steel. Zoro's eyes widened. The sword has no name, but it sure is worthy of one. Do you like it? I haven't named it yet, Luffy said. Swinging his sword, he pushed back Zoro around 20 feet. Please use your third sword, Luffy said. You aren't worthy of it, the green-haired man simply replied. Then I'll myself worthy of it. Vanishing into thin air, he soon appeared in front of him. Luffy swings his sword but paused for very short amount of time to let Zoro block it. You're not bad, Zoro, Luffy said, smiling. You too, halting your swings so that I have a chance to block with that. He draws his third sword and putted it in his mouth. What does it taste like? Luffy asked, confused that someone would even put a sword into his mouth. What? Zoro was even more confused that the young marine made a comment. What does it taste like? Keep running into his head. Soon his curiosity overpowered him, and he gently licked the grip. A decision he must regret. He had forgotten that his sword was taken from him by Morgan, and has been putted in a place God knows where. Spitting to let the taste he had tasted leave his mouth, Luffy laughed heartily. If he was a rubber man, surely his mouth would reach the ground. Santoryu, onigiri, he said, approaching Luffy at high speed, trying to cut through him by swinging the swords across his chest, resulting in a descending diagonal crossing slash from both swords while the mouth blade performs a horizontal cut from either the left or right, depending on which side of his mouth he positioned the sword's main blade at. Gah! Zoro coughed up a blood. Looking on his chest, he was sliced by Luffy, not too deep to be fatal but enough to put him down and yield. How? He asked. You're still slow, Zoro. He paused, weak, sheathing the black katana of his. Luffy crouched and faced Zoro. Would you like to become the best? Zoro stared through the space, as if he was remembering something. He nodded. Welcome to the Marines, Petty Officer Zoro, Luffy said. What? Zoro replied, but soon regretted as he started to feel his wounds rolling on the floor left and right. Luffy can't help but laugh. Well, it's good to hear that the higher-ranked Marines agreed to make you a Marine, Luffy said, walking with Zoro towards the little ship he had. Since Captain Monkey D. Luffy had started to gather a special crew of his own, he was given a boat which will be bigger should the numbers increase. Should the higher-ups want to discuss something of the newly recruit, the recruiter, which is Luffy this time, has to defend his recruit. If cannot, he or she won't be allowed. Luffy simply said that his companion is a swordsman. Mentioning that he is a pirate hunter, the higher-ups gave a sigh of relief. Who said I wanted to be a Marine? Zoro said, in disbelief that Luffy forced him into joining. Ararara, we're not so bad, it's just those Marine placed in small places that are sometimes. Well, sucks. A voice was heard behind Captain Luffy and Petty Officer Zoro. Luffy looked back and straightened his body and saluted. Admira Akiji, Luffy shouted, in a respectful tone, of course. Captain Monkey, since you have started a crew of your own, I'd like to. The Admiral was cut short by Luffy. Permission to speak freely, Admiral, he said. Go on, the Admiral replied. I'd prefer not be called Captain Monkey, Admiral, Luffy said in a somewhat pleading form. Zoro and Akiji instantly laughed and pictured in their head a monkey wearing a Marine uniform with the rank of captain. Luffy's sweat dropped. He was made fun of once more. While training to become a Marine, he was often called Monkey Marine. Now he kinda don't want to remember those things. Not that they were cruel, he actually joins in their jokes and acts like a monkey, but now he is a ranked officer and has a reputation to hold. Ahaha. Fine. Luffy, as I said, since you started your own crew, you're gonna need a helping hand. I'd like you to meet your first mate. You can come out now. As the Admiral finished his sentence, a figure appeared in the shadows of a dim hallway. The figure instantly told them she's a she. Captain Monkey, I'd like you to meet your first mate, Lieutenant Tashigi. The blue-haired woman laughed upon hearing the name Captain Monkey. Soon was followed by Zoro and a loud oops from the Admiral. She has a short hair, and it was dark blue, and a sweet dark brown orbs. Wearing a purple flowery designed shirt and a blue jeans, black shoes, and a rectangular red spectacles. For a moment the green-haired petty officer froze. That did not go unnoticed to Luffy. Zoro, are you okay? Kuina? That's impossible. Zoro was stuttering as he tried to stroke her face only to meet a katana's edge on his neck. You may have mistaken me from someone else, but I don't like being touched without my consent. Sheathing her sword, Zoro turned away and started walking, saying that he will return to his quarters. Did I say you are allowed, petty officer? Or have you forgotten I'm second in command, she said, her voice full of authority. TCH. Zoro replied, not caring. He started to walk back to his quarters. Did he just TCH? Me? Her jaws dropping. Never did she saw a low-ranking Marine did that to his superior, not to mention a captain who was just laughing when the man TCH her. Still, she was interested and wanted to be under Luffy's command. When Still was training, rumors of the next hero who'll follow Garp in his footstep. He was handsome, brave, funny, charming, and a part of him that's like a kid, which most girls found out to be cute. Some of the boys with him did envy him and started calling him Monkey Marine, and when Luffy joined in with them it all became fun, making him friends with anyone. Well, Tashigi respectfully motioning his hand, for the two of them to walk, shall we return to the ship? Why yes, she said, bowing low. As her hair shadowed her face, she tried her hardest not to be seen blushing. It's so boring, Luffy said, as Tashigi steers the ship. There was a few glances from Zoro, and she gladly returned them with cold, sharp glares which made the swordsman clearly uncomfortable whenever she's in the vicinity. Captain, what are we going to do now? Respectfully asking her captain. Well, the Den Mushi is not ringing, so we'll just roam East Blue until we see a trouble, or we are ordered to do something, he replied. As if it was on cue, the Den Mushi did ring. Yeah, who's this? Luffy was so bored that he forgot it was a line directly connected to Marineford. Don't who's this me, you brat. That voice, that anger, and that sudden snore, Grandpa Garp's. Ji-chan, don't sleep on me. With that monkey D. Garp was wide awake. Tashigi was surprised at how Luffy talked to his commanding officer/instructor, even though they might be family related. Marines are strict about their rules, especially when it involves officers. A commercial ship has reported that they have been attacked and been boarded by pirates. Alvida pirates are threatening the passengers. My orders? He said, his tone suddenly changing. Protect the passengers at all costs. Rules of engagement? He asked once more. If a passenger's life is not threatened, you to do as you see fit. If the pirates does not surrender, Garp answered back. It'll be done, he said, and ending the transmission between him and his grandfather. Let's go and sign. We have a job to do. I'll go change into my uniform. Captain L. Luffy, ship's on sight, Tashigi yelled, instantly blushing, seeing his captain's wet black hair. He was wearing the coat of justice, a long-sleeve white polo shirt with vertical black stripes. He stood before her, his fresh scent hitting her nose like a punch from a professional boxer. TSK. Tashigi suddenly changes when the door behind the two of them opened, revealing the green-haired swordsman. What did I do? Zoro said, poor Zoro receiving the cold shoulders from Tashigi. I hate my life, he thought to himself. Humph, she said, turning her eyes into the ship. Zoro, civilian safety first, you're not a pirate hunter anymore, Luffy said. I did save that woman from Shellstown, give me at least some credit, Zoro retorted. Luffy smiled. He was simply making sure of what Zoro is made of. Sir. You will add a yes, sir. Or yes, Captain. When you are talking to your commanding officer, Tashigi said angrily. Okay, that's enough, Tashigi. I've forced him into joining the Marines. It's okay, putting a hand on her shoulder, she stiffened up. Why, yes, sir. Tashigi replied. How come you're stuttering when talking to Luffy here? Zoro wondered. Urusai, she retorted. Give me the treasure, girl. Alvida yelled, fighting to a certain orange-haired thief. We're stealing and you're stealing from us? Not that's rude, she said. The girl replied no word, but used stronger force to grab the chest full of gold. Where's Kobe? I swear if that kid runs from me, I'll kill him. You might be the finest woman I know, but your mouth sure ain't one of them, the orange-haired girl said. I ate the sub no me. Wait, what did you call me, Br? The wall suddenly exploded, causing Alvida and the orange-haired woman to fly to the other side along with the Alvida crew. The crew groaned from pain. Some were now officially knocked out. Marines, the passengers yelled. That was the cue for the orange-haired girl to act as another passenger, and for her to steal another day. Alvida? Where are you? Luffy shouted, looking at each person on board. Marine scum, I'm here, she said, yet Luffy just looked around the ship, not giving attention to the slim and beautiful woman in front of him. You're not Alvida. I already saw her picture. You may wear similar clothes, but she's fat, ugly, and to some reports smelly at times, Luffy said. Luffy was sent flying. He was hit by a huge steel club. What the? Regaining his balance mid-air, you really are Alvida. But that's impossible. How come? She snarls at him. Well, you're beautiful, slim, and opposite of everything she was, Luffy said. He was saying so casually that one would think he's trying to win her heart. Aren't you a charmer? She dashed at Luffy. The young Marine was fast, but how could he hit something so slippery? While Luffy dodged the club again. He didn't want to hurt a woman that would cause her wood. A few punches that could knock her out is fine, but using his blade? No way for the young Marine to pull that. Well, since it's a stalemate, I'll see you again, she said seductively. Captain Luffy. See you soon, Captain. Instantly kissing his cheek, Alvida jumps on the other side of the ship and already had prepared a small boat. What? Tashigi's eyes shot wide open. Everything happened so fast that not 30 seconds has passed since they entered. Luffy paid the kiss no mind, except the low-ranking pirate had managed to escape against him. He already know that the higher-ups will say that the Sub Nomi is a Paramecia type that's really hard to defeat since most attacks are just repelled, but they'll surely question him why didn't he strike her down. Captain, are you okay? Tashigi quickly approached the young captain. Yes, help the passengers please, he smiled, and she happily obeyed Zoro, call for a rescue ship. Miss Luffy said, seeing a young woman laid down on the floor. He offered his hand, which she accepts. Call me Nami, the teenager said. I'm fine, though I think I saw that other marine called for you inside your ship, she said. Well then, if you're okay, I'll take my leave. After a few minutes, Luffy quickly returned to the passenger's ship. Zoro said that he did not call for him, so something did smell fishy. Why would that Nami girl lie? And the worst has met him, the treasure stolen. Tashigi still unaware that it has been stolen. At the very least, all passengers are safe. Then the marine rescue ship has arrived and it was time for Luffy, Tashigi and Zoro to leave and return to base. The sun was setting down. Captain, we only want a few questions for you, the man said, the man who had a position of rear admiral. I think you already know it. We do not care for the treasure, but you've let a pirate go and that might sully the name of the Marines, an old man said. I will not strike a woman down, not when the mission is already complete. All passengers are safe and like you've just said, you didn't mind the treasure, and as for the name of the Marines, I didn't sully it, in fact I made it more known in East Blue. A young captain has let a pirate go just to ensure the passengers and civilians' safety, he said, void of all emotion. Sighs, he is correct. I'm sorry we have disturbed your evening, Captain, the Rear Admiral said. No problem, sir. You only wanted to make sure that the Marines are to remain in the righteous path, Luffy said. And what is the righteous path, young captain? The old man said. Justice, he said. A few days after Luffy's interview with the Rear Admiral, that man had traveled towards Marineford and reported everything that has happened at East Blue. Garp, Sengoku said silently as he entered Garp's room. He quietly closed the doors. Akainu has now his eyes on your grandson. What made him look? Garp questioned. That interview at East Blue headquarters, Sengoku replied. You mean the part where he said, justice is the righteous path? Sengoku nods, then Garp started to laugh so hard. That guy simply has nothing to do. If he wanted Luffy, he'd take him instantly under his command, Garp said, reassuring his friend that he has nothing to worry about. You know Akainu and that absolute justice of his, Sengoku said. He might cause more trouble should he take our place, Garp said. He does smell like trouble, Sengoku replied. The two men looked at each other. The word smell make them stare into each other. Want a beer? Garp said. Yeah. Sengoku smiled, as the two old men made their way into the bar, only to smell like beer later that night. Luffy's crew sailed once the sun rose up. A marine officer with a crew of his or own can sail to any parts of the sea, except when they have orders or when some areas like the Grand Line as to where even officers needs permission to enter or exit. The crew was now searching for Alvida and Nami, the girl whose identity is unknown. Even the headquarters were not sure if she was even part of a pirate crew or just a simple thief. Barep, the den mushy is ringing. Gotcha, it said as Luffy picked it up. Yes, it's me, the captain said. Understood. I'll go check it out myself, ending the transmission. Captain, what was it? Tashigi asked, steering the ship. Zoro was on the side, sleeping like always. Well, there are reports that a pirate ship is nearing Syrup Village. I'm not sure if they're planning a raid, but we have to protect the people. 3 shades of red run across the ensign's cheeks. Why yes, sir. Setting course for Syrup Village, she said. He's so cool, the dark blue-haired girl thought. How long before we reach the village? Luffy said. With this distance, in the middle of the fight, should there be any resistance, Tashigi replied. TCH. Double our speed, we need to get there before the townspeople have to fight them. I'll be in my room, call me if the island is in sight. Yes, sir, Tashigi replied. Zoro narrows one eye, watching Luffy as he enters his quarters. The green-haired swordsman was sleeping yet awake at the same time, a skill only he could master. Tashigi sailed with the wind. Faster did the ship run, but it's still not enough to reach the island before the pirates does. Come on, Kaya, we need to run. A boy with a long nose said. The girl whose name was Kaya tripped and fell. Shouts and yells from pirates demanding their surrender. The boy with Kaya was with 3 children. They run and run in that small island of theirs. Minute after minute hope was starting to fade away. They were starting to grow tired. The island was small and there are not much to hide from. Marines! A pirate yelled. Kaya, who was with 4 boys, was hiding in a bush. Captain Kuro said to send all men towards the shore. He added, What about the rich girl? Another pirate said. They can't hide forever and we won't catch her if we can't defeat the Marines, do we now? The pirate replied. Their sound of their footsteps started to fade away as they run back towards the shore. Captain Usopp, that call have saved us! The kid yelled. Usopp, the boy with the unbelievable long nose, had a smug look in his face. Oh, of course, he said, stuttering. That prank call did save us, he thought. Luffy, Tashigi, and Zoro jumps out of the ship. They saw black smokes towards the town ahead. It covered the island with black skies and a grim atmosphere. The raven-haired boy remembered what his grandfather Garp made him see. The town which was razed, its people massacred, and nothing was left except piles of corpses. Screams and few swords clashing could still be heard, meaning the townspeople can still be saved. The 3 young Marines run towards the town only to be stopped by a man with a heart-shaped shades and at least 30 men. Hello, kids, he said, pulling out a sharp ring blade similar to a chakram except it has a string in it. Move, Pirate Luffy said, eyes shot wide open and anger was slowly taking over him. Relax, kid, he said, swinging his weapon 1-2 Django. Luffy closed his eyes and puts each of his hand on Tashigi and Zoro's faces. Once his hands was removed, Django and his men were on the floor sleeping. How did you know? Zoro said. Easy. The moment he started swinging that weapon of his, and his idiot of a crew who all looked into it, including him. Tashigi's sweat dropped at how clumsy these pirates are. Are they even pirates at all? There wasn't supposed to be any Marines. A man wearing a spectacle said, My plan is perfect. How could the Marines know about this? He said. Captain Kuro, maybe it's that kid who you have kept on calling liar and nothing more but a pest, the pirate said. Pissed at what his subordinate said, he pulled out his weapon, claws. He wore it on his hand and slashed the man, making his body drowned in his own blood. The other crew gritted their teeth. They hate their captain, but he was a smart one, the one whose plan never failed, and it brought them richer than they were. Captain, there they are. Another man pointed at Usopp and Kaya, who was with the 3 kids. Kuro suddenly disappeared, appearing in front of Usopp, who still didn't saw Kuro in front of him. Die, he said, getting the boy's attention. He slashes HIW claws only to be met by 2 katanas. Kuro widened his eyes, seeing a man with green hair and a marine uniform. Their steels clashed, swinging left and right. Claws and blades have met again and again. Tashigi grabs the 3 children and yelled for Usopp and Kaya to follow her. Luffy watched as how his own recruit, Zoro, fight a battle against Kuro. You're gonna die if you just stand there, kid. Luffy was instantly surrounded by Kuro's own crew. There was nowhere for him to dodge. Captain, watch out! Tashigi yelled, drawing her sword and rushing to her captain. Luffy shot, his eyes opened, then an invisible force hits all of the pirates around him, causing them to faint. Lifeless, as they looked, they were still breathing. Zoro was amazed at how strong Luffy was. Haki, Kuro whispered. What's that? Zoro asked. Kuro groaned. Time to end this. Vanishing in front of Zoro, he reappeared behind him and slashes his back with tremendous force. Kuro then ran towards his ship with a few men behind him. Luffy saw Zoro. He was in a critical condition if not treated immediately. Tashigi, take care of Zoro. I'll get that bastard. Luffy started to chase Kuro and the 7 men who was with him. Hold him off. Kuro yelling at his crew. The 7-person didn't even last a second at Luffy. I'm already on board, see you bastard. Luffy then gave him a confused look. You're not so smart when you're panicking, are you? Luffy said. WW what? Kuro replied. How can you steer a ship that big on your own, eh? Luffy said, surrender now or fall before me. I give up. Kuro saw how Luffy used his conqueror's haki onto his men. Kuro's a smart man. He knows when to sheath his blade and when a fight is impossible to win. Luffy gave a disappointing look. He wanted to slay the man in front of him, yet when a pirate surrenders, a marine is obligated to arrest them. I'll see you in impelled down, Luffy said. Kuro was suddenly frightened, yet he remained calm. A pirate, not even 100 million bellies would be sent to impelled down. It was impossible. A larger marine force arrived a few hours after Luffy ended the battle. The town was ruined. Rebuilding a small town like that will require lots of time and hard work, not to mention most of the people were killed. The Marines decided that they will be sent on a different location with houses and jobs already waiting for them. Kaya was left with no one except Usopp. Every people who worked for Kaya was slain before the battle even begun. Luffy sighed, yet he saw Usopp. After the battle, the boy told stories to him, Tashigi, and Zoro about the monsters he defeated. Luffy laughed, Tashigi just smiled, and Zoro's face was unexplainable as they listened to Usopp and his 100,000 army. Yet when time calls, no matter how much of a liar or coward this man is, he is brave and courageous. Usopp, what's your specialty? Luffy asked. I am the bravest man of the sea, I can. The truth. Luffy said, good thing that Tashigi, Kaya, Zoro was already asleep. I can shoot things pretty accurately. He then grabs a slingshot with this, he said, as if he was embarrassed that it was the only thing he could do. Come with me, Luffy said. What are we doing here? Said the wondering Usopp as to why he and Luffy would be near Luffy's ship. Here, throwing a rifle at Usopp. Shoot me, the captain said. Eh? I said shoot me, or is the great Captain Usopp scared? Taunting the long-nosed boy. Usopp didn't want to shoot a newfound friend. Heck, he didn't want to shoot anyone. Insult after insult, Usopp was reaching his line. Now so ready to shoot Luffy, he aimed. Closing his eyes, look, he heard. Luffy was there, still standing still. The bullet was cut into half by his sword, but the real thing he wanted to say is, where would it have hit him if not cut by his sword? There in the middle of his eyes, that was where the bullet was sliced. Usopp blinks a few times. That's an accident, he said. No, it is not. Sheathing his sword, Usopp, do you want to be a hero of the sea? The young captain said. Usopp simply nods, still not believing himself. Then I offer you a position into my crew. Shall you accept this? Today and forever you will be a marine, he said. Oh, okay, the young boy said, but I can't leave Kaya. He added. Tell me more about Kaya. Well, she wanted to be a doctor and help people. Do you want her with us in the ship? Marine ships have a large collection, medicine, books, and many more of those stuffs, Luffy said. You have to convince her, Usopp, Luffy said. He then started to walk his way back into town, later followed by Usopp. Kaya, I have to talk to you, Usopp whispered to Kaya, who had just woken up. Luffy, Tashigi, Zoro was now before at their ship, waving their goodbyes to the people who were evacuated of the island. Well, what do you say, you two? Luffy said. Kaya all left alone. No one was left in the island and no family to take care of her, only Usopp. She nods and climbs aboard the ship. Zoro narrows his eyes following Kaya's movement as she walked into the deck. Where do you think you're looking, pervert? Tashigi yelled. Wah, who are you calling pervert for eyes? How dare you call me that? You weird green-haired thingy. Yuwa, did you just call me thingy? Zoro retorted. And the two continued their rambling. Luffy stopped both of them before their swords are drawn. What about you? Luffy asked, holding the rifle, waiting for Usopp to grab it and head to the ship. Usopp looks back. Thanks, Mom, he said, accepting the rifle and smiling at Luffy. The young captain looks at the island, bows and says he's sorry for the fallen. Beware pirates. Captain Usopp is here. Usopp at the very front of the ship, standing there in a heroic position. You can't be captain. Luffy is captain, and you're just a recruit, Tashigi said. Thanks for that, for eyes, Zoro said. I hope you're ready to die when you said that, Tashigi, drawing her katana. Always. Drawing his two katanas. The crew laugh as Usopp continued talking to himself, Zoro and Tashigi clashing, deciding who's a better swordsman. Luffy just sighed and watched his crew. Kaya was right beside him, asking question about how the Marines live. Alright, Luffy said, taking a stance. Fire. The sound of gunfire echoed throughout the entire ship. Faster. Luffy yelled, commanding Usopp to reload much faster. Your opponents won't be so merciful to let you reload, he said. Usopp finished reloading and Luffy was already in front of him, sword pointing at the long nose's throat. There's some tools down below the ship. You can upgrade your rifle with whatever it is you needed, Usopp smiled, upon hearing the captain's word. He's always been one to invent stuffs or upgrade them. Zoro, you're next! Luffy shouted at the sleeping Zoro. Tashigi was watching his captain, feeling all dreamy inside. Kaya followed Usopp to where he was going. A little time for themselves was needed though. Long Nose and herself isn't on any sort of relationship. Why, it's morning already? The green-haired swordsman said, groaning as he started to wake up. Zoro hasn't eaten for at least an hour, and he already has a bed hair. See, Captain, Tashigi shyly said, playing with her fingers. Can you teach me? I mean more, can you teach me more? Smiling upon seeing the captain nodded. Subdue Don Krieg and his crew. I got it, sir. A woman, wearing a purple suit, and a pinkish blown hair. Whose unit is near me and Don Krieg? Captain Monkey D. Luffy, and his crew, the Den Den Mushi replied. Hello, Luffy Quinn. I started to shape with hearts, and the usual dance that a certain blonde cook does. Copy that, sir, she said, ending the line. Listen, you worthless pieces of shit, double R speed, the woman yelled. The crew then turned their eyes into hearts as they yelled yes, sir, and started working, full of love by being called worthless shits. You too, Django. The woman yelled. Shore boy, clean the deck. Yelling at Django, who has been captured and recruited into the Marines. He yelled back, being a chore boy really does suck. Ever since his capture, the woman who was commanding them now was the one who's in charge of them to be brought into Eni's lobby. Seeing at how he and some of the prisoners with him was able to fight, yet with a pardonable criminal record, the Marines brought them into its ranks as a chore boy, and they have to earn them to be promoted. What's the landmark that we are currently nearing? The slim yet large-breasted woman said. The floating restaurant, Baratie. Good work, Luffy said, removing his shirt. I'm gonna take a shower. Zoro, you steer the ship. Tashigi blushed, but what caught Luffy's attention was the sleeping Zoro. The captain sighed, massaging his temples. He then started to carry Zoro, bridal style if I may add, slowly carrying him to the side of the ship. There he's thrown the green-haired swordsman overboard. Splash! The sound was loud and strong, expecting a apologizing Zoro. Luffy and Tashigi's eyes widened, their jaws both dropping as they saw that the three-styled swordsman was still sleeping, floating, his face was on the water. How the hell? Was what they said in unison. Seeing a man sleeps while he drowns was sure rare. Captain, what good is he for? Tashigi said, her eyes narrowed. I don't know, Luffy said, chuckling as the swordsman still sleeps. His body was twerking, freezing as he was just been rescued. The swordsman was still sleeping while his body vibrates from the coldness it had experienced. We'll make a stop at Baratie, get some good food and sail again, Luffy said. Well, I gotta take my shower now. Oh, let him freeze, he said, laughing out loud as he entered in his quarters. Now that's really cool, the captain said, seeing the floating restaurant. That is the Baratie. I agree, Captain, said Tashigi. Just Luffy when we're not on duty, he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. The woman stiffened up, her face as red as a ripe strawberry. Why yes, LLL Luffy. Please get Usopp and Kaya, and get them dressed, you too. With that, the satisfied Tashigi skips happily as she goes down the deck towards Usopp and Kaya. Entering the room, Usopp was there hammering the rifle, adding some modifications to strengthen its usage and maximize its potential. Usopp, Luffy has asked for you and Kaya to get dressed. We are going to a restaurant. Kaya suddenly showed up, bringing some tools and more metal that neither Kaya or Tashigi knows what it's used for. Okay, Usopp, let's go, the blondie said. The crew dock their ship, and they jump out from the ship, landing on a platform. Luffy Kuin, a woman said behind Luffy, wrapping her arms around him. Luffy was hugged with a bone-crushing force. If he was a normal man, his bones would be surely crushed into nothing more but dust. Hi, Hina-san, the young captain yelled, trying to get out from the grip that is from Hina. Tashigi's mouth was wide opened. Usopp was the same. Kaya simply smiled, and the swordsman just yawned. Luffy sensed some evil aura behind him, and Hina, the crew, was LL staring at him with malicious intent. Everyone in Luffy's crew entered the Baratie, including Hina, of course, still wrapping Luffy in a tight hug. Inside, Luffy explained how Hina has become his mentor, and how she was always visiting him in his classes. Isn't he just the cutest? Hina said, letting her cheeks rub against Luffy's. Tashigi pouted, seeing the sight of Luffy with another woman was something she didn't want. Yua! A man, with a blonde hair, screamed, running towards Luffy and his friend's table. Mademoiselle suddenly grabbing Hina's hands, about to kiss it the way gentleman does. Popping a vein, clenching her fist. What do you think you're doing? She throws a punch so strong that strong men would be ashamed of pervert. Triple A, I can die now, the blonde man said, bloodied, well, especially his nose. Hina-san, what are you doing here? Luffy asked. I already told you before, Hina is fine, she replied. Luffy scratched his head, feeling all too uncomfortable. Yeah, see, Captain is respecting you, Hina-san, Tashigi said. Huh? Popping a vein, was I talking to you, Four Eyes? Four Eyes? The woman in spectacles thought. And it's Captain to you, she said, making a fist. Why, yes, sir, Tashigi replied. A mad superior officer isn't what she wanted at her back right now. Hina, what are you doing here? Luffy said, as if the purple-suited woman was all love-struck upon hearing her name. She rubbed her cheeks over to his, with much force than before. Tashigi pouted, and sat there feeling all depressed. That woman is taking Luffy all for himself. Hina then got all serious, explaining to them that Don Krieg is here at East Blue and she has an arrest order and Monkey D. Luffy's assistance was needed. Hey, look there, a rich man said, seeing a small figure nearing the Baratie. The Marines who were just simply eating while being entertained by a blonde cook. He kept on dancing, being funny to serious, talking about true love. The blonde man shifts from girl to girl in a somehow endless cycle. Zoro, one who least looked or cared about the perverted blonde man, caught the commotion that was going on. He stands up and walked towards one of the windows that was free from the crowds. That's, he said, drawing his sword. He ran towards the platform of the Baratie. The crew then suddenly stared at the three stout swordsmen, who was running outside. The rest of them soon followed, including the blonde man. Luffy stood beside Zoro and the rest behind them. Miracle Mihawk, the swordsman said. Trouble was all Luffy could smell, and this place wasn't proper. He'd have to pay for the rent. God, how he wished he was a pirate now and just run after the battle. I'll fight him. Zoro stared at the captain, who shook his head. You can't stop me, he added. This is my destiny. Rare to see a Shichibukai outside the Grand Line, Hina added, not to mention the best swordsman in the world, he said. Miracle Mihawk, the man whose eyes could scare you just from a stare. His ship was a chair with candles with it, lit. Behind the supposed to be vessel, there a man in full golden armor was being dragged. It's clear that this man was dead. A sword slash was clear. It was what pierced the somewhat invulnerable armor. I'd be very glad if you could handle this, Monkey D. Luffy Mihawk said. How did you know my name? The new world is waiting for you, he simply replied, before he could take any further step to sit on his ship of a chair. And I'd like to challenge you. Drawing all three swords, he charged at the man who's facing his back. That's low for a swordsman, he replied. For Luffy and Hana it was clear what he did. Pulling a small knife-like sword, he swung it at great speed. Zoro started coughing up blood. Kaya and Usopp rushed to his side. Tashigi draws her blade, and the captain was now mad. I'll be your opponent, he replied furiously. I'd be happy to test your skills, he replied, bowing a little. Res Heath technique. Lion's Song of Death. In a blink of an eye, Luffy was now behind the world's greatest swordsman, Res heating his blade. Wonderful, truly wonderful, Mihawk said. Not only have you made me draw my sword, you've also wounded my arm, he said, turning his arm a little. Everyone saw the bleeding arm of Mihawk. You're close, yet so far, he said. Upon finishing his words, Luffy's marine cloak was now covered in blood. How, Luffy said, losing all energy. He collapsed into the ground, panting heavily. Tashigi rushed to his side. I'll be waiting for you there, grandson of Garp. With those final words, Luffy last saw Mihawk vanishing in his sight. No question about it, this is Don Krieg, Hina said. Too bad that he's dead. Luffy was now awake, yet he's still so weak. Take this kid also, they all heard. The blonde man looks back only to see a feet inches from his face. A loud thud, as the body of the now unconscious man falls. His name is Sanji, he's a good cook, the best of us in here, the man said, his voice cracking, and tears were only a matter of time. I ain't taking that perverted man in my ship, I've already had enough to handle, Hina said, jerking her head on his ship, her crew waving hands at her, hoping to get the attention of the beautiful woman. Well, a cook sounds good, Luffy said, His back was still bleeding but little as a huge bandage covered it. The man smiled and said, "Take him to all blue if possible, a myth it may be." It was clear to Luffy the passion inside this man. Hidden by his perverted actions, he's a gentle and caring man. "Aniki!" Two men's voice was heard, catching everyone's attention. "Good, Marines, please help us. There's trouble at Orange Town," the two said, who was now at Zoro's side. His acquaintance perhaps? Or his real brothers? There's still so much mystery from his newly found crew. "Name's Johnny," the one said, wearing a black shades, and mine's Yasaku, a man wearing a headgear said. "And we'll explain everything on the way." "Well, Luffy, time for us to part ways," she said, seductively. That didn't go unnoticed by Tashigi. "Thanks for the help," Luffy said, sarcastically as he continued to groan from his injury. "Let me make it better than kissing Luffy at his own very lips." Luffy stood there frozen. "Tastes like meat," she said, running her tongue across her lips. The man blushed. "Meat, did she say? He liked meat? So he must taste very delicious." "Wah dash! Why you can't do that," Tashigi said. "Shut it, Four Eyes," glaring at the spectacled woman, suddenly changing her attitude as she faced Luffy. Winking, she said her goodbyes, and a darker, evil aura was emitted by Hina's crew, all of them staring at the lucky guy, Luffy. "You said Orange Town," Zoro said, slamming his fist on his little brothers. "Did we say that?" "I mean Kokoyashi Village," the little brothers said innocently. Zoro face-palmed at how his brothers misdirected them. Zoro continued to punish the two men who was crying at how they've humiliated their big brother in front of his friends. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ship, Tashigi Chuan, Sanji, who's still oblivious that he was on the marine ship, not knowing that the owner of the Baratie handed him to Luffy, continued saying how Tashigi was an angel brought by heaven, or how she was the most beautiful woman in the world. Her hand on the cook's face struggling as Sanji forcing a kiss on the dark blue-haired woman. "Get off!" Tashigi yelled, hitting Sanji with the tip of her sheath, instantly knocking the cook with a smile on his face and a nosebleed. The woman stormed off, her head steaming as she passed on some of the crew, Usopp practicing his rifle skills, Kaya who was reading a book silently, and the swordsman who was sleeping with two other men knocked out beside him. "Yes, sir," but Tashigi heard upon entering the captain's quarters. "I understand, sir, but there are two people here who said that there are clearly the one Luffy was arguing with was a higher officer preventing him from changing his course towards Kokoyashi Village, or to be precise Konomi Islands. Sir, I'll not stand idly by while people might be in danger. I'll go check it, and since I can smell you and the Marines in the Konomi Islands like fish, be prepared," the boy said, but his rank isn't higher than the ones he just talked to. Luffy, what was that?" Tashigi said shyly, still not used calling her captain/crush by his first name. "I don't know. Konomi Island Marine Fort keeps on saying that the island is in a peaceful state, and no pirates in sight or in their islands," Luffy said. "Yet." Tashigi paused. "It smells fishy," Luffy chuckled, massaging his stomach, "and for some reason he doesn't want any help, at it with pathetic reasons," he said. "Then, Kokoyashi Village it is," Tashigi said, smiling. "Yep." Luffy sits on his chair, as Tashigi begins to walk towards the exit. "Tashigi, please tell Sanji to prepare us a meal," he said, with a wide grin. Luffy left his room and walked towards the kitchen only to see Sanji, crying like a baby. "What's wrong?" Luffy said. "CZF. Left me," he said between his sobs. The crew's eyes widened. "You've just found that out," they said in unison. "Let's not bully our new member," Kaya said gently, patting the head of their cook. As if instantly recharged, Sanji began to stand up and act like his usual self again, offering his hand to Kaya. "Mademoiselle," he said, kissing the back of her hand. "Pervert," Tashigi and Zoro said in unison. "I said it first," Zoro retorted. "No, I said it first," Tashigi said. "Wanna go at it?" "Four Eyes," Zoro said, drawing his blade midway. "Who you calling Four Eyes?" "Marimo." She too draws her blade. Luffy massages his temples as he watched his crew. "I'm hungry," he thought. After eating, the crew got back to what they were doing before eating. Zoro started cleaning his swords, then resumed to his sleep, with his little brothers. Sanji cleaned the kitchen, then instantly flirted with Kaya and Tashigi. Usopp practiced his rifle skills by firing at some empty and useless barrel with a target clothing in it. Tashigi tried her best not to kill the annoying Sanji, then simply visits Luffy with a blush on her face. Kaya was the same, reading the book and constantly helping Usopp with his rifles. "Captain?" Tashigi said quietly as she enters the dim captain's quarters. She saw him there, sitting on the comfy couch, sleeping with his mouth a bit open and a little noisy snore. She giggled at the rare sight she'd seen. She walked around the room looking at this and that, pacing cause she truly wants to sit beside Luffy and let his head rest on her shoulder. This would hurt so bad, but I'm so dead if he finds out her thoughts was waging war against the other. Yeah, but it sure is worth getting caught. She shook her head. What if he wakes up and returns the feeling, as if a three-way battle was going on inside her mind? Fine. She screamed a bit loud. Luffy jerked his body a little and was about to fall on the couch. Swift as the wind, she suddenly sits to where Luffy will land on her shoulders. Yeah, she thought, her face however says it all on what was going inside her head. Each breath she felt, each of those warm breaths that hits her neck. She was in bliss, not wanting to end it. She'd kill for another moment like this. It's still a long way towards Konomi Islands, so why not, right? Luffy moving his head, finding a more comfortable position when he suddenly puts all her weight into Tashigi, causing the two of them to fall in the rather unswell huge couch with Luffy on top. His wound still hasn't healed yet, as Tashigi caught a sight inside the back part of his body. Blushing redder than ever before, Luffy was on her breast. His warm breaths and his head moving, she moaned. Trying to keep it the sound inside the room, she tried not to moan, but Luffy kept on moving and now he was talking about meat. Luffy started to drool, wetting the shirt Tashigi was wearing, added by his constant movements and his breaths. She couldn't kept it anymore, she moaned loud. Now she just hopes that no one can hear her and that his idiot of a captain won't wake up. "Aniki, what's that?" Johnny said, as he and Zoro started to wake up, making the moan inside the room clearer into their ears. "There it is again," he said. He starts to stand up where Zoro knocks him out. What the heck is he doing to her? As perverted thoughts entered the serious mind of Zoro. He tried to return to his peaceful sleep, but how can he, when there's a sound like that? Well, it's better that he hears this rather than any one of them, especially that cook who's starting to get on his head. The crew remained at their position as they finally saw Kokoyoshino's. "Arlong Park?" Usopp said upon seeing it. "I can't just charge in recklessly. Though Zoro and Tashigi are good," the captain speaking on his mind, their ship hidden in by the large bushes and trees. "Okay, we need to make a plan," Luffy said to Tashigi and Zoro, who might be the only two persons other than him that can fight. "What's the plan?" Zoro said, his eyes narrowed at the blonde cook who's dancing around Kaya. His eyes turned into hearts. How can that guise? So the swordsman stopped as he has no other words than can describe Sanji, saved for pervert. "Should we just charge?" Luffy said out loud, accidentally. Usopp then came out from the ship's inside, wearing the armor that he made himself from the spare steel that was supposed to be used for repairing the ship. His armor was clanking as he made his way towards Luffy, Zoro, and Tashigi. "What's the plan?" he said, this time a less more cowardly. Before anyone could say anything, they heard some people screaming, yelling, and cursing. The crew got down, thinking it was a large group of pirates. Zoro moved towards some of the bushes and returned shortly. "It's a mob, heading towards Arlong Park," Zoro said with a bit worried towards the people. "What's wrong?" the captain said. "Yeah, they're a mob, sure, but they're using pitchforks, sticks, and others, just what they could find on the ground, wanting to help the people." He started to move uncomfortably, itching to get out there. "Do you really think they'd stand a chance?" he added. "Do you?" Tashigi said, laughing. "Trust me, woman, I can handle myself fine," he said. "Guys," their leader said, signaling the entire crew to come near him. "We will split up," he said. "Oh, Luffy, do you think that's a good idea?" Usopp said, as Luffy, Sanji, and Tashigi walked towards Arlong Park. "You want to be a hero, right?" Luffy said, putting his hand to the coward's shoulder. "Now is the time," he grins, putting a desperate smile. Knowing that this might be the end of the great Usopp, he collected his guts and puts up an intimidating posture as they near Arlong Park. The people was ramming the gates of it. A siege has began. The mob turns their attention to them, putting a stance, though they were wearing a marine uniform. They pass through the crowd as each and every one of them moves away from the marines who've just destroyed Arlong Park's gates with the one hand. "Pirates! Surrender now, or die," Luffy said, the last part he said as grim as possible. Then his eyes shot wide open, as he saw a familiar person, tied up and all bloodied, her entire body beaten to a pulp. Luffy instantly felt something inside him, yet he kept his coolness. A fighter whose head is not clear will be killed, he mentally reminds himself, but that didn't stop his blade to move swift, cutting 4 fishmen who were in front of him. Their bodies sliced into half, blood gushing out of them as they screamed in agony, which faded shortly after. "Captain, that girl is," Tashigi said. "The thief," Luffy said, as he was clearly reminded of that beautiful orange hair. "Did she got into trouble?" he said, which Tashigi just shrugged. The two forces faced each other, the fishman who has at least 80 to 100 fishmen behind a tall man, his teeth similar as the shark's. On the other side, Luffy, Usopp, Tashigi, and Sanji were standing there, weapons drawn and ready to end the fight that's about to start. The 10 fishmen charged towards them. Tashigi was about to move as well, only to be blocked by Sanji. He winks at her, in which she just showed a disgusting face. Sanji faced the 10 fishmen in front of him. Using his feet, he moves in a whirlwind style, causing the 10 fishmen to crash in any direction. Not bad, Luffy thought. Then more came. Tashigi joins the fray, in which more and more joined up. "Assist them," Luffy said. His face was facing the long nose, who seemed to have frozen there. After a harsh slap on his face, the sniper returned to reality. Luffy explained to him how he, the great Usopp, is so important to the team. He is their lifeline, he said. Usopp moves a bit farther from Luffy and got into the side of the pool, giving him a great angle to where he will shoot. Firing his first shot, one of the fishmen's heads suddenly has a hole in it. At that moment, Usopp didn't care if he killed the man or not. What he felt was the excitement of the battle he was in. The feeling was surreal that he first thought he was just dreaming. Again and again he fired, saving both Tashigi and Sanji when some enemies are behind them and they didn't notice, or when they can't block or dodge that attack anymore. For each shot he made, one was sure to fall down, dead or not. Once again didn't matter, for Usopp hit them. Never missing a shot, the feeling that he first felt grew larger and larger. His eyes no. His entirety was solely focused on putting down his enemies that he did not notice 4 fishmen on his back. Sanji saw this and rushed to his nakama's side, easily dodging the attacks with his movements. Tashigi left alone. Left and right the attack came, up and below came again. She was in danger. Seeing this opportunity, the Arlong crew charged all together, their swords thrusting towards her in every direction, closing her eyes and seeing that might be the end. Not a single pain she felt. Slowly opening her eyes, she saw everyone around her was down and unconscious. Their eyes rolled back. Haki, the fisherman who seemed like a shark, said, and the one who's obviously the leader. "Good," Luffy said, suddenly appearing in front of the fisherman leader, his blade already on its way to end the leader. "You're more than just a pirate, are you? And you're not a simple marine, unlike the ones that are here. Ping them so I won't be disturbed, bh. Bunch of idiots," he said. "You guys okay?" Luffy yelled, not leaving the shark's eyes. Tashigi was fighting a fisherman who's really pale, and his shoulder blades, well, it really does have a blade shaped like. Sanji was also fighting another fisherman, one who squirts water out of his mouth, in which he was clearly disgusted. Finally, Usopp was fighting an octopus-like man, 8 swords blocking his every shot. The 3 were starting to have a hard time. "They're not normal, Luffy, they're a bit go good," Sanji said, dodging every water that fishman squirts at him. "He can't seem to find an opening." "Arlong," he said. "And you are?" he replied back. "Monkey D. Luffy," he said, his voice a bit louder, giving him a bit more pride in his name. Punches were thrown and was replied by swinging swords. Clang! The sound of metal hitting its same kind. Luffy's eyes widened as he saw how Arlong bitten his blade. It should have gone through. His blade was swift and sharp, and the only thing that had ever stopped it was teeth. Using his strength, he pulled back his blade together with the shark's teeth. He smiled upon seeing lost teeth on his enemy's mouth, but that soon changed when Arlong instantly grew another set of teeth. "Surprise?" he said, smirking at the marine. "Actually, yes, that's really cool," he said. "I have to step up a bit," he said, finally an opponent that he could go faster and a bit stronger. "Zoro!" he yelled, disappearing before their very eyes. The fight stopped between the lieutenants of Arlong and Luffy's crew as they all watched the deciding fight. "Gah!" Arlong yelled as he was sent up. Higher than his building he flew. Once more the captain moves at extreme high speed that the eye can no longer follow. Everyone was truly amazed at how strong this young boy was. Never did they saw a boy or a young man like him here in East Blue. Not even Gold Roger was this strong when he first started to become a pirate. Fool! Arlong yelled, opening his mouth revealing the sharp teeth he had. His plan was simple: bite the young man. Tekai! His hand was hardened like a steel. Punching towards the mouth of the beast, then fist and jaws met, and for the first time a fist has won. Crushing Arlong's jaws as Luffy's hardened hand passed through, his whole hand into his mouth driving down Arlong downwards towards his building. From the very rooftop, the shark fell to the very floor of the building, causing it to crash towards him. Luffy landed a bit graceful, his hand bled though he had hardened it. One deep breath and he was back to normal. Little did he know that the orange-haired thief was already awake, free, and was watching him. "WWWW stop, please stop," a man wearing a mouse hoodie pleaded at the swordsman in front of him. "I'm Captain Nezumi," he said, hoping his rank would change the three-styled swordsman's decision. Petty Officer Zoro the swordsman smiled. As if regaining every dignity he had, "How dare Wahaha." Nezumi tried saying something but was cut off as Zoro cuts the man's left arm. "You're a Lora, Ki, ranking officer. Folo ga. My O riders," he tried saying between his constant scream by the pain that he was feeling. "Sorry, I already had an order," he smiled. Behind him 2 other swordsmen who's not wearing any sign of being in the Marines. "Burn it to the ground," Zoro said. "Yes," Aniki the 2 said in unison, making their way towards the fort which was filled by corrupted Marines. Meanwhile, a certain blondie pouted as she was left on the ship all alone. "Not being able to fight," she said, making faces at her invisible opponent. "I'll show them," she said, having a devilishly smile on her face. Luffy stood tall, Tashigi, Sanji, and Usopp stood behind him. The townspeople were cheering for them, some are even crying as if a lifetime curse has been lifted and their soul finally feeling peace. A man in a journalist outfit moved through the crowded crowd. Sir, may I take a picture, a headling if you please?" he said. Luffy nodded and together with his crew a picture was taken. Another man confronted them, name's Genzo. "I'm truly honored for what did you do, but the Marines here are." Luffy putted his hand in front of him. "Don't worry, it's already dealt with." Looking up, they all saw a black smoke on the other end of the island. Thank you," Genzo said, a man full of scars. He bowed, his head hitting the ground as he started crying and kept repeating the words "thank you." Luffy and Sanji smiled. Tashigi had tears in her eyes and Usopp was crying on the floor, touched at what the man was doing. "It's not a time for crying," Luffy said, removing his marine cloak. "It's time to celebrate," he shouted. In an unknown place in the East Blue. Come have a drink with me like old times," the man said. He had crimson hair, 3 scars on his eye, and a black cloak. "I don't drink," the other man replied. "Come on, you're always drunk when we were still young." Ha, the crimson hair said. "Fine." A man with an eye similar to that of a hawk agreed. After some bad punchlines and corny jokes, the 2 finally got into a serious topic. "How was he?" the black coat said. "Good," he replied, not wanting to discuss it any further. "You know what I mean," the crimson man said, his eyes narrowing. "An inch more of his blade and my head would have been off. Worst, I didn't even saw his sword," he said, a bit shamed for some reason. "That's bad, I've always wanted him to become a pirate," he replied, his face covered with a grim aura. Around the world, news of Arlong's defeat and a marine burning down another marine base spreads. Luffy, a man said, raven-haired as the boy in the newspaper. He was standing beside a really huge man. "Ace, what is it?" said the huge man. "It's my brother," Ace said, turning the paper towards the big old man. "Captain Monkey D. Luffy has defeated the pirate leader Arlong and its crew. More news." He also said that he was the one who'd set the marine base on fire, killing all Marines with it. He said that the Marines that was in the islands of Konomi have defected the organization and has signed contracts with the Arlong crew. Other news: pirates are swarming all over Logetown. The town itself is being besieged by the pirates wanting ship repairs and provisions. Ace said, "Thus the end of the news?" The man was saddened at the news he heard. It wasn't that because he chose the Marines, it's because he is a Marine that they'll have to fight sooner or later. The old man saw this and decided to yell that there was going to be a party later. drinking, women and everything. The entire crew of the ship yelled as they grabbed one another, including Ace, to a dance. Other place. This kid, a man of spiky red hair, says Logetown is being defended by the Marines. More and more arrive every hour. Soon we won't be able to pass it, he said, thus ordering his crew to double their speed and join the pirates who were attacking the town. Around the world. Though the small was news as it gets farther and farther from East Blue, what made it a top hit was the boy who did it was none other than Garp, the hero grandson. Zoro and the others were getting famous as well, a pirate hunter who've joined the Marines. Different rumors here and there are spreading. East Blue. So this cute kid is getting famous, huh? A slim and beautiful woman said. Huh, who's that kid? We should be focusing on Logetown, a pirate said, dressed like a clown. Why are we doing this? A young light blue-haired woman said, you should have just told him that you wanted to join, she said, dropping a sweat. I can't, I stole a treasure right in front of him. He's gonna arrest me, an orange-haired woman said, as they sneaked their way inside the Marine ship. And what do you hope to accomplish by hiding here? The tanned woman replied. He said that he'll protect everyone in Konomi, right? I just wanted to see him do that. The last part she said a bit louder. Sanji was there on the deck, grabbing out the supplies that the people of Konomi have graciously given them. Most of them were foods and other provisions, but there were some clothes as well, though they won't need it much when they're all on duty. Just then he heard a woman's voice and his Sanji mode was instantly activated. I smell love, he said, approaching the twin barrels that were shaking a bit. Yua! He screamed as loud as possible, causing everyone on the ship to rush to the cook's side. What happened? Luffy yelled, soon was followed by Zoro, then Tashigi, then the rest. There they saw two beautiful women, one was tanned and the other was not. A few minutes of explanation about everything and the orange-haired woman apologizing about the much earlier events. Yeah, sure, why not, Luffy said, which got the crew's jaw hitting the ground, except for Sanji, who was on his knees at Luffy, crying and thanking him for the wonderful blessing he had given him. While Luffy didn't understand Sanji, he understood the other two, Nojiko and Nami their name was. A navigator was the orange-haired woman, and her sister was not that special but was tough, a bit of training and she's ready to go. And so the two women said their goodbyes. Cheesy moments happened which Luffy and Zoro didn't want to see. The two men shared the same opinion and at the same time not. Zoro was annoyed with commotions like that while Luffy just simply reminded him a bit with Ace and their special friend. Take care of them, or I'll beat the crap out of you, Genzo yelled, as the marine ship starts to slowly vanish in his sight. Nami and Nojiko kept waving back even when the island itself starts to become blurry in their eyes. A new chapter for them was about to unfold. Tashigi, Luffy said, as his head peeks out from his room. A moment please, he said, a bit serious yet whispering yell. Zoro bats an eye on Tashigi as she enters the room. They aren't gonna do it again, are they? Zoro thought, his mind still hasn't forgotten the moaning that came from that very room. The swordsman immediately assumed that it was that thing that they were doing. Inside the room, Luffy just ended a transmission with his Den Mushi. Logetown is in danger, they need help, he said. Yes, I've also read that from today's paper, Tashigi said. They want to join up a team with Hina-san and a guy who's called White Chase Smoker, he said. That's good news. Captain Hina is also known as Black Cage Hina and White Chase is Captain Smoker, a well-known man for capturing pirates, she replied. I'm worried about them, Luffy said, sighing. You and me, we can handle ourselves in a fight. I mean, you're close to using Saru after training you that move one time, he said. What about them? I don't want them getting hurt. He paused again. Not on my watch, he added. Luffy is vulnerable, chance, the ensign thought. Walking towards the sitting Luffy, she bended her one knee. Captain, we'll train them together, she said, soft and calm. She was holding each of her captain's hand with a little tight that it was supposed to be. Luffy responds with a smile and entwined their hands. Thank you, he said, standing up. Let's train them, shall we? Logetown is very far from here. Still holding her hands. The door opened, and it required Luffy to release his grip on the ensign's hand and open the door, satisfied yet wanting some more. The little ensign. There, Luffy yelled. Training was about to begin. He started first with Kaya, Nami, and Nojiko, their most weakest fighters. He trained them a little about using a sword and a rifle, should it come to that. But he reminded them that they weren't gonna fight, not while they are still that weak. Again was the word Luffy used, again and again and again. Zoro, Sanji, and Usopp was being pushed to their limits. Zoro was starting to grasp Zoro. Sanji was able to do Jeppo immediately but loses his flight midway, and Usopp was having a truly hellish time practicing Kami. Tashigi was handling the girls, with basic sword techniques. It wasn't like she was teaching them much about swords, just how to swing, block, and parry properly. The whole day was so tiring that only Luffy and Tashigi were standing up, tired as well, but the two of them have been into worse situation while training. Well, that was tiring, Luffy said, as he got out of his room, fresh from the bath. I'm kinda hungry, he said. Entering the kitchen, he was still talking to himself, as he searched the contents of the refrigerator looking for at least some leftovers. Humming as he keeps on searching for more meat, he didn't realize that the door opened and closes. Captain, what are you doing here? Tashigi said, also fresh from the bath, her hair still wet as it drips some onto her clothes. Just looking for some meat, but they're all cold now, Luffy said in disappointment as he rubs the back of his neck. Well, I'm just gonna grab some milk, but if you want I can heat it for you, she said. Alright, but you gotta eat some too. It's kinda embarrassing when I'm eating all alone, he said, cheerfully smiling at her. After eating, well, he didn't succeed in convincing her first mate into eating meat this late at night. Though the woman did sit down and drink her milk while watching her beloved captain, and how silly he looked as he devours that meat. Few giggles she lets out, and her captain asking why she was giggling, but she just says it was nothing and smiles at him. It was 4 a.m. when Usopp, the one who was steering the ship all night long. Fortunately, Usopp was the only one who's not too tired. Sure, he did practice a lot too, but his practice was Kami, the ability to float like a paper, making them harder to hit you. Plus, most of his time training was simply firing and practicing his weapons and traps. Luffy woke up, followed by Tashigi, which her room was just beside Luffy's. By the time the two got to the steering wheel where Usopp was, they were already being escorted by the Marines into a safe passage towards Louge Town. The Marine force that they read in the newspaper was wrong as they reached Louge Town. It was just a few large ships, indicating that the strength of the Marines here didn't rely on its numbers but to the people defending it. Take some rest, Usopp, I'll take it from here, Luffy said, patting the shoulders of his long-nosed nakama. You too, Tashigi, he added. The woman insisted that she was simply fully awake now, plus she had rested well when she slept. Luffy just gives out a sigh at his stubborn first mate, as the two of them greeted the warm sun that slowly shines. The first to woke up among the crew was Sanji, as he starts to cook their breakfast. Sanji, tell them we'll be back. We have to meet up with our commanding officer, Tashigi said, as Luffy waited outside the kitchen. Should he get in there was no stopping the monster inside him from eating all that delicious scent. Hi, Sanji responded with a love tone, as Tashigi shivered at the face Sanji showed. Tashigi went out, as she and Luffy locked their eyes and nodded in unison. The two walked towards the marine fort that requires quite a short walk. Arriving at the marine base, Luffy-kun, the two youngsters heard, as both of them got a feeling they all knew too well. Hina-san, the boy said, turning around to see Hina already clinging to his arm. Tashigi, faking a cough to get Luffy's attention. Where is Captain Smoker, Hina-san? Luffy asked, as his cheek was being played at. Here, a voice said. From the sky a thick white smoke turns into a man with grayish hair. His name suits him just fine, Luffy thought. The man was muscular, and is wearing an unbuttoned jacket with holes or pocket if you prefer, just to put his cigar. So you're the White Wolf, huh? Smoker said, as his face pointed towards Luffy. Eh? Luffy didn't understand, even Tashigi didn't. Smoker sighs. That's what they are calling you, Smoker, releasing the smoke he inhaled. Ugh. I don't care, just do what I tell you to do, he said. Yes, sir, he replied. White Wolf, huh, it's not bad, but why that, he thought. Report says that pirates have ceasefire against one another and plans to break through our line of defense, Smoker said. Black Cage Hina, you and that kid will act as vanguard, and I'll take the rear guard, he said. With the ships under my command we can bombard them from afar, thus sinking them before they reach the Louge Town, or worse, the reverse mountain. So we have a war at hand, Hina said in a sad tone. Are other Marines coming this way too? Luffy asked. Yes, but a few of them. They won't make a difference, Smoker said. Okay. We'll go with your plan, Hina-san. Let's go to our position. Hina nodded as the two of them prepare for a battle that will begin in a few hours. Back to Luffy's ship, He ordered the 3 women to leave the ship and go help other personnel as the bombs and cannonballs might hit this town. Kaya was happy, for her time reading books about medicine and other stuffs are about to pay off. For Nami and Nojiko, they are just happy they won't be joining it. Captain Luffy and Captain Hina has finally taken their positions, acting as vanguard for the bombardment unit which is being led by White Chase Smoker. And there they are, Sanji said, as if by cliché they arrived as soon as the Marines have finished up their formation. It was a wedge formation, 2 ships acting as the tip of the sword, Luffy's and Hina's ships. On the very end of the wedge, Smoker and the bombardment unit. The plan was simple: the enemy pirates will be forced to separate into 2 sides of the triangle. As the enemies suffer from White Wolf Luffy and Black Cage Hina's attacks and their crew, the entire bombardment unit had already planned out their trajectory, thus avoiding hitting their own if they remained in their position. The first cannon was fired, then the second, and then the third. As the cannons continued to rain, both sides of the party, Luffy, Zoro, Tashigi, Sanji, Usopp, and Hina with her crew, has attacked and boarded as many ships as they can. They've gone into pairs. Luffy and Tashigi, Zoro and Sanji, and lastly Hina and Usopp. Luffy and Tashigi has gone ship into ship. The ship that they've left not only acts as a shield on their ships, but it also acts as a blockade. Who are these 2? A captain yelling, as he saw his entire crew gets decimated by the duo. The 2 of them moves in a very synchronized way. Zoro and Sanji cleaned up as well, however they had constant arguing between who was better or worse. The lines Marimo and Arrow Cook was repeated again and again that the enemies will quite remember them. Hina saw how coward this guy is. Even with a rifle, his nervousness and constant fear might be his end or his savior. Attack them now! Hina yelled, as her arms started to shape like a stretching iron, forming into a huge circular cage. Usopp grabs his bombs and throws it inside. Boom! An instant group of pirates eliminated with a single combination. Nice. She said. Not bad, she added. After that, Smoker didn't forget to do his role as well. Most of the ships was eliminated but Smoker. But something was wrong, it was too easy. Smoker was utterly shocked at what he saw, and only one thing was running on his mind: Lougetown. He instantly grabs his Den Mushi and commands the entire fleet to surround Lougetown and eliminate all pirates. By the time the fleet has arrived, it was long over. Each shop ransacked, its items and merchandise is gone. Marines, pirates, and civilians was all over the floor. They've putted a hell of a fight, Smoker said, closing the eyes of a young Marine. Sure, he didn't forget Lougetown to be defenseless. He was just too focused on the pirates on the horizon that he lost sight of the town. What's worse, they didn't know what pirate group has gotten in or how many. There were a lot of civilian survivors and a few Marines. Smoker said he's sorry, but he has to know which crew has gotten in. The wounded Marine was happy to help, and he says the people who had grabs his attention. First is Buggy the Clown. Second was the beautiful and slim Alvida. Third was a man wearing a hat, Trafalgar Law. Then there was this man, a man who could control magnetic force, Eustace Kid. And a pink-haired kid commanding such a large force. Smoker asked him who it was. See he. Yelled his name on Roger's death stand. Kobe. He yelled. The soldier said between his coughing up of blood. Then he finally loses his consciousness. Smoker ordered to pass this info to Marineford, and give them their orders immediately. The White Wolf and his crew has better things to take care of. Nami, Nojiko, and Kaya, they were all at Lougetown when this happened. Left and right they've searched, every alley, every shop, and every house. Just when they were about to give up, they saw the 3 of them standing there, all smiles and hugging a woman. Tashigi? Luffy said with confusion. However, the captain looked at his first mate, and she was there right behind them. Zoro kneeled as his eyes started to form up tears. You're alive. Hey, the woman said. Can he get more annoying than this? Sanji said, as he and the crew have been in Lougetown for at least a day after the battle. Zoro was there, still crying. His face was full of tears of joy, and it's kinda getting annoying by now. Marineford has sent a high-ranking officer to question everything that has happened here. For Black Cage Hina, an elite amongst the Marines, has been sent into the Grand Line to subdue or kill any pirates that made past the battle at Lougetown. Smoker was on his room, as he keeps on answering different questions not just from the Marines or media, but also from an organization that has control over all the places in the world government. The world government handles not pirates, but terrorists that may cause chaos and disorder from its lands. Shut up. Iaro cook. The green-haired swordsman replied between his sobs. Even Sanji didn't felt like himself when he sees this bastard sobbing, even if it's tears of joy. Sighing, I can't take these anymore. I'm gonna go somewhere else, he said. Putting his hands on his pockets, he started walking. Usopp, Kaya, Nami, and Nojiko followed Sanji right after he left. Don't get the wrong idea, they're happy for Zoro, but it was getting annoying at this point. Which left Luffy, Tashigi, Zoro, and a woman who's called Hina. So let me get this straight, Luffy said, as he scratched his temple. You two are twins, he said, grinning and in a cheerful tone. For the last time, Tashigi paused. We are not twins, she and Kuina yelled, which disappointed Luffy. Come on. You two really do look like one another, he said, as if by some reason he was forcing fate that these two should be twins. The two women sighed, as veins were starting to show off on their temples. I got it, he said, as he muttered something that nobody quite understand. So Zoro, you've become the greatest swordsman of the world yet? Kuina said. Luffy tried to restrain himself from laughing, as he remembered how Mihawk ignored Zoro. Zoro glared, which instantly shuts the captain, whistling, acting like he didn't try to laugh at all. Zoro glared at the young man, waiting for him to crack. Sorry, he said, then he chuckles. So you're stronger than Zoro? Kuina asked. Luffy simply shrugs. He's not the type of person to boast his strength or his skills in battle. Zoro. Still weak as ever, eh? She said. Zoro remembered how cocky this woman was, and now she's 10 times more cocky. Though the woman did hit puberty well, slim and athletic body, with an ample buxom and a very curvy figure. Tashigi did look like her, but for Tashigi she was still on her development years. Zoro simply tilted his head downwards. Wow, she's annoying as ever, he thought. He was smiling. She can annoy me anytime she wants, if she promised she won't die. The swordsman was confused. He didn't love her except just a simple admiration on how she handled herself with swords, even though she's a woman. Yet for some reason he cares too much for her. Is it love? But he knows truly inside him that there's no feelings, or rather a different kind of love, like a family. Kuina draws her sword. Let's do this, Monkey D. Luffy, he said, drawing his sword. The two of them dashed at each other as their swords clashed. Less than a minute later, Kuina found herself in a desperate situation. Luffy's blade just an inch on her neck. I lost, she said. Luffy smiled. She was truly stronger than Zoro, or skillfully. Men really are more stronger than women, that is a given fact. However, it didn't mean that men will and always win against women. It's because I'm a woman, she said, cursing herself. Luffy offers a hand, as one knee of hers was bended on the ground. Holding her hands tight. It's not because you're a woman. Skills and willpower wins the battle any time of the day, he said, giving her one of his usual grin. She blushes as Luffy said that. He remembered how Zoro said that to her when they were still kids, and that might be the reason why Zoro followed this young man. Look at her, she's more stronger than she looks, Luffy said, turning her head towards Tashigi, in which she blushed both from jealousy and happiness. Marines of different ranks, low and high, started running towards the square. The officer from Marineford is here, a young recruit said, when Luffy asked him. Each and every one of them had also moved towards the square. As for his other members, well, they're probably there already. The White Wolf is right, his crew is already there, waving hands at them. All of the Marines formed up their lines according to their crew and superior officer. Luffy and his crew was the only crew that has got most of the attention, the White Wolf and his crew who burned down a defective marine base in Konomi Islands. They were chattering as to how that a few of them are able to defeat the turncoats, and at the same time Arlong, a former Sun pirate. Attention on deck! Smoker yelled. The entire platoon stood straight. A man walked in a dog hat, thus covering his face. Everyone simply assumed he's those unknown high-ranking officer that's being sent to deal with problems such as this. The man removed his hat, and everyone stood in awe. It's him. Ji-chan! Luffy yelled. Then everyone remembered this was Garp's grandson, as everyone's attention was split into two, the hero of the Marines and the young man who recently had his debut as a Marine officer, White Wolf. Garp popped a vein. It's Vice Admiral to you, he yelled, instantly disappearing in their eyes, and appeared right in front of Luffy. If Luffy was fast, so fast that your eyes can't follow him, It's worse for his grandpa they didn't felt him at all as he passes through the crowd of Marines. Launching his fist into Luffy's head, the boy tried to dodge it but to no avail. It was way too late. It hurts, Luffy screamed, as two huge bumps on his head appeared. Everyone simply dropped their jaw, including his crew. "Wanna go at it?" Luffy said, provoking his grandpa. He disappeared in thin air like Garp did, but the old man simply smiled. "Too slow." Swinging his fist downward in a direction where no one is there, then a loud crashing sound was heard. Luffy was on the ground and a crater was formed. Once more everyone's jaws dropped even further. "Don't forget your teachers," Luffy Garp said, for he was Luffy's teacher in most of his training. Second was Black Cage Hina. Then boy repeatedly screamed it hurts again and again. "Looks like you'll need more of my fist of love." A wicked smile appeared on his face. Sorry. I'm sorry," he yelled, as he struggles to free himself as Garp single-handedly lift him by his collar. "Just go back to what you were doing," Luffy yelled. Garp was speaking so fast and furiously that nobody understood what he yelled at Luffy. Garp was with Luffy and his crew inside a room in Lougetown's marine base. "You guys are as of now promoted into a higher position," Garp said. "Ensign Tashigi, you are hereby promoted into the rank of commander. If it wasn't for the formalities, Tashigi would be jumping around. Unfortunately, there are also some high-ranking officers at the room witnessing their promotion. Petty Officer Zoro, you are promoted into lieutenant again," Garp said, his voice void with emotion, yet he's smiling as he congratulates them. "Chore Boy Sanji, you are hereby promoted to ensign. Chore Boy Usopp, you are hereby promoted into ensign. Chore Boy Nami, Kaya, and Nojiko, you three are promoted into the ranks of Master Chief Petty Officer. Chore Boy Kuina, you are hereby promoted into the rank of Warrant Officer," Garp said. The entire crew was dumbfounded. She just came here to watch the ranking of her newfound friends and now she's one of them. The Marines might have presumed her as part of the crew since she was also found battling pirates at Lougetown. She tried speaking but was too shocked to say anything. "Wait," Luffy said, getting all the attention as the room falls into a silence. "What about me?" he said. "What about you?" Garp replied. Luffy's mouth was wide opened. The boy was the only one who's not promoted. Though he remained the highest rank amongst his crew, he's still saddened as he didn't hear his name got promoted. "Well, this sucks. I'm going to eat," he yelled, stomping his way out of the room like a child having tantrums. "Welcome to the group," Zoro smirked at Kuina, in which she just sighed. "Well, if I'm gonna explore the world, might as well to do it in a legal and way," she said, laughing so loud as she catches up to her new captain. The entire crew was celebrating all night, while Luffy eats his meat while his face was pouted. For some reason the newly promoted commander found this to be way too adorable. She just wanna go up there and cuddle him. "So, you aren't gonna tell me what you saw?" Garp said, as Smoker joins in the fray of old men drinking. "How did?" "I'm an old man. Battling with Roger was always full of surprises, good and not," he said as he chugs down his ale. "I know fear when I see one," he said. "Dragon?" Smoker said, in which Garp was caught by surprise, spitting some of the ale he just drank. After the events, the crew decided to help rebuilding Lougetown. No orders from the top yet, so after that they've partied every day, of course, which includes Luffy still pouting about not getting a promotion. As he keeps on blaming his grandpa, Zoro and the rest were drinking and sleeping for the past 3 days. That didn't mean that the crew didn't train. They've continued their training from morning to afternoon. Smoker arrived with orders. He ordered Luffy and Tashigi into his room. "Kid, from now on you're at the Grand Line," was all Smoker said, as he instantly dismissed the 2 young Marines. Everybody was excited for they were all waiting for brand new adventures. Marineford also notified the crew of Captain Luffy that it's one of the special Marine groups that has freedom over the Grand Line. Meaning they only have to report once after 5 months, and their mission was simple: capture, kill, and destroy pirates. But that didn't mean that they aren't free as they think they are. Should orders be delivered upon them, they are to obey the instructions immediately. Luffy was disappointed that they aren't going at the reverse mountain. He truly was excited to feel the upstream river. Instead they got into the calm belt, which was surprisingly all the monsters there didn't go extinct. Luffy hunted down the monsters one by one, as he yells meat. It was a busy day for the captain and the cook. They finally had a supply which could last for 2 whole years. In 1 whole week the food that they've got was clean gone. Luffy, Zoro, and Usopp were eating every day until their stomachs ache. The women were scolding them since now they've no food to eat and the nearest marine base was a week's travel. As Sanji releases the smoke in his mouth, these men have no class, he said in a gentleman's way. Nami instantly rams her fist into the Sanji's head, causing a huge red bump. You're the cook. Why'd you keep on cooking then? For an instant he realizes that it was all his fault. He could have stopped cooking, but Luffy sweet-talk him by saying how's he the greatest chef in the world, and Zoro with the taste of your food is as good as how you love women, and Usopp with he really is a gentleman, not to mention the best cook ever. Kneeling as he asked for forgiveness into the starving women, the cook promised that he'll be the hero in their meals to come. Well, that being said and done, they could do nothing except find an island where food are plenty. Heck, they would even go with just fruits. What the? All of them said in unison, arriving at an island in which there are hundreds of people cheering for them, as if heroes returning after slaying a great monster. Welcome to Whiskey Peak. A huge banner was displayed on the docking area. Welcome to Whiskey Peak, a man said, who had a red nose, a hairstyle that has been used during 16th and 17th century, and has a blonde hair. What's this all about? Tashigi said, fixing her spectacles. My name is Igram, and I am the mayor of this town, he said, holding a saxophone. We always welcome people who are coming from the blues and into the Grand Line, he said, cheerily. The crew was amazed that every day this whole island was celebrating and partying. A whole day of partying, drinking, and fun. Everybody was doing whatever it is they wanted until night came and took over, causing a silence as everyone sleeps. Nami and Nojiko were literally drunk that they even puked at the barrel where the beer was. Usopp and Kaya slept on the couch after having fun on some of the games that had been held. Sanji, who seems to have been lucky, was in a room full of girls who were head over heels for him. Zoro was on the rooftop sleeping, while still hugging a barrel of beer, which left Tashigi and Kuina outside the mayor's house, and where the ship was also just 100 feet away. The two women were with the slightly drunk Luffy. I think I've had too much today, he said, trying to remove the dizziness that he was feeling. The three were on the sitting by the wall, near the door. Luffy suddenly leans his head towards Tashigi's shoulder, which caused her a eep and a furious blush. Enemy, Luffy said. He might be slightly drunk, but that didn't dull his senses at all. Tashigi and Kuina nodded, as all three of them suddenly dodged the very heavy person that drops on them. I see, that's why they call you the White Wolf, a woman said. She was wearing a huge yellow lemon-like hat. Then another man appeared, black hair in a dreadlock style, wearing a sunglasses, and he was picking his nose. And these must be his fangs, the dark-skinned man said, referring to Tashigi and Kuina. Then he threw his booger at the three of them, in which Tashigi easily blocked. Please stop that, it's disgusting, Tashigi said. One might think she was just kidding with the tone in her voice. But she really wasn't. After blocking the shot, she was so disgusted that she shivered for a moment. I can't believe Baroque Works is gonna be in a treat, the woman said. Baroque Works? Luffy wondered, slightly tilting his head. My name is Mr. Five and these here is Miss Valentine, and I'm sorry, we won't be telling you anymore, he said, as he started to pick his nose again. I can't get anything with this, Luffy thought, as he dashed towards Mr. Five with great speed that the two didn't have time to react at all. Pulling his sword, he hits the back of Mr. Five's head with his sword's bakat, making him lose his consciousness. Miss Valentine suddenly floats high up into the air, and started to drop so fast that she weighs at least 200 tons. She drops in a slant direction as she forms a kicking position straight into Luffy's chest. Tech-eye, the White Wolf said, sure his body was like an iron carapace, but sure still made him fall back. He then punched Miss Valentine hard, that even when she was weighing 200 tons it sent her body flying. Wake the others, Tashigi, Luffy said, which the commander followed Kuina go with her. Luffy ordered, as the supposed to be villagers were now armed with different types of weapons, swords, rifles, bazookas, and many, many more. By the time Tashigi and Kuina arrived, it was already a fight of a lifetime, Usopp firing at all sides as he tries to protect Kaya and Nami. Nojiko was punching every guy he saw. Here and there, they were one by one knocked out by the tanned woman. Sanji was running around the house, crying as to why his luck was so bad. He was being chased by the women he had betted with. The rest of them have mopped up the enemies, but there was one person missing, Zoro. Last time I saw him, Zoro said he'll be at the rooftop. Wake up! The crew yelled in unison, as Sanji kicked the still sleeping Marimo on the head. It's morning already? He said, as he cleansed the trail of drool that was on his cheeks. As the crew kicked and punched one of the strongest member of the crew, he yelled in pain for his sleep was disturbed and it was just getting good. Every one of Luffy's subordinate have just arrived to see Luffy with some of the supposed to be enemies. A blue-haired girl, and the mayor itself. From their view it seems like they were both apologizing to Luffy or asking for something. Luffy nods, as the crew watches him listen to the two-person. Yeah, Miss Valentine and Mr. Five are not really bad, just like us they have their reason, Nefertari, Vivi said, or that what she said her real name was. I see, I'll talk to them about it, Luffy said, as their conversation ends. The crew now approached their captain, still checking their surroundings if anyone out there was still kicking. But it seems like their captain has mopped up more enemies than them combined. Luffy explained to his crew how Vivi here is a princess in a kingdom called Alabasta and her friend Igram, or now Igram, is the captain of the guards in her kingdom. Suddenly a loud crashing sound echoed in the island. Everyone including Vivi and Igram moved towards where the sound came from. There they saw Miss Valentine smash the marine ship Luffy was commanding. Valentine! Vivi yelled, as she facepalmed herself just by looking at the joyous face of Miss Valentine. Like I said, I'm sorry! Valentine yelled once more as she and Luffy were bumping each other's head, both pissed off at one another. Stop being a child, you guys, Nami said. It was like the fight was nothing. Luffy and Valentine became really close in the span of a few minutes. The two of them are like Zoro and Sanji, Kaya said, as she giggles at how those two hotheads are always on each other's ass. Good thing we saved the Den Mushy, Zoro said, handing it to Luffy. Luffy then dialed someone. This late at night, you sure they're going to pick it up? The swordsman added, as some of them returned to sleep. Who is this? Luffy asked, instantly receiving a slap behind his head from Nami and Usopp. You're the one calling and you're the one who's asking? Usopp yelled, trying to calm down from the idiotic display of their captain. Everyone laughed or giggled. JG-chan, Luffy said, which made his entire crew shivered from fear. It wasn't that long since they last saw his grandpa. Oi, do you know what time is it? I need a new ship, mine's destroyed, Luffy said, not really listening to his grandfather. Okay, what? You idiot. When I see you again you're gonna receive lots and lots of fist of low. Garp was cut off when Luffy ended the transmission. Then it rang again. It'll be there in 5 days, a voice said. He sounded so serious, and he's like the type of person who's not funny to be with at all. Yash. Let's wait for 5 days, Luffy said. During the 3 days of waiting, small marine ships arrived every day to get the captured Baroque work agents and foot soldier, except of course Vivi, Igram, Miss Valentine, and Mr. Five, who's now missing. Valentine, Vivi, and Igram knew not where the Dreadlocks man go. But Valentine and Vivi did reassure Luffy that he was a good man. During the third night, Valentine was talking to Luffy about how she'd love to make chocolates. Luffy was determined to change her views into making meat foods for him. However, Valentine did insist that it might be more sweeter than meat, which made Luffy drool a bit. On the fourth night, Igram says his goodbyes. He said that he'll be going to go earlier and pretend to be Princess Vivi. Luffy vowed to protect the said princess, as he will treat her as one of his own. Igram deeply sighed. Before hugging Vivi, the blue-haired woman was crying and crying as she tells his friend to be careful. As they waved their hands goodbye, the spare pirate ship where Igram was on suddenly exploded. Everyone was left speechless at the current scene that just happened. Igram was killed in an explosion. Another ship, not too small and not too big, just enough for one person to handle alone if she ain't lazy. There sits a woman, in an all-purple cowgirl look. She saw the body of Igram and picked it up. For some reason they could see Igram was still moving slightly, meaning he's alive and well. It may have taken a toll on his body, but nothing that he couldn't recover from. Luffy said something about rescuing Igram and ensuring Vivi that everything will be fine. I promise you, everything will be fine, hugging the crying Vivi as she worries for her friend. Everyone also said that they'd help, including the newly friend Valentine, in which Luffy insisted she joins so that she could make those things, those what you call chocolates. He said, once again drooling. Morning came, and Luffy and the others were doing their own thing. Then a ship came. It made Luffy completely forget all his trouble and feelings as he saw his new ship. A/N. It's like the Thousand Sunny, except much more bigger, and instead of a happy lion it had a wolf in it, and has more tribal designs. Intimidating. Outside and very friendly inside, it had everything. A library that was being dimly lit by a huge aquarium acting as walls. Everything was like 5-star class yet uniquely designed. From the kitchen to the bathroom, from the rooms to the training room, and everything else was just so cool. Everyone was in awe as they saw the ship, and the sails says Marines except this one had a tribal design of a wolf's head behind the Marines lettering. But what got them most was where was the shipwright? Or the steerer of the ship? For no one was on deck when they've gotten in. A door suddenly slams open. "Are you super ready to sail?" the figure said. The entire crew was checking here and there as they explore their new ship. A sight to behold. It wasn't too huge, but still it was enough space for everyone. Zoro immediately took the crow's nest, which has a small house, few pillows and his barbells. The men also had a huge room for them. It was 5-star class style, and at the same time it remained the seafaring atmosphere in the room. For the women, their room was larger than their numbers, more unused beds and pillows. The captain's room was absolutely amazing. It was split in half. One was his room and the other was his office. The room was split by a huge wall of aquarium with a dim blue light that gives relaxing atmosphere. And when you have to go to his room you will open a door and where you will cross a tunnel-like hall. "It's super, isn't it?" the man said. He had a blue hair, and it somewhat looked like retro. He was wearing a floral shirt, his arms were a bit bigger than his biceps, and it had tattoo stars in each of it, and the most disturbing was his speedo. "Hey, isn't that guy a bit freaky?" Tashigi said to Kuina, as the two women were staring at his speedo. "Yeah, it's kinda disturbing really," Kuina replied. The two weren't hating the man or anything, but come on, even you would talk about a guy wearing just a speedo in public. "Oh, there are already 2 perverts here," Zoro said, as he too can't avoid his gaze at the dark blue speedo. "Frankie is super hentai," the man yelled, making a pose where his arms would collide with another. Zoro facepalmed himself. This guy's is worse than the arrow cook. He thought he's even admitting it, he thought as he shook his head. "I'm Monkey D. Luffy, nice to meet you," the captain said, as Frankie shakes hand with his new commanding officer. "I know, your grandfather once saved me after some Marines tried to arrest me for helping my master build the Oro Jackson Gold Roger's ship." Everyone was amazed at what Frankie had just said. Not only did he build this ship, he even helped build the ship that made Gold Roger a pirate king. Truly this man might be called a genius if not for his display of public nudity. But hey, it's a free world. "I've worked for the Marines but didn't join them, but now Garp has forced me into joining to be on your personal crew," he said, as his stomach suddenly opened, making the girls gag a bit. Even Zoro and Sanji showed a weirded face. "Whoa! That's so cool," Luffy and Usopp said, as they saw the man act like a robot. "Oh yeah, I'm a cyborg, half human half robot," he said, full of pride that his body shone as the sun hits it. Hey, can you also make me a Psy?" Luffy was halted as he fell unconscious to the ground. Everyone rushed to his side, as they saw his breathing labored, his body sweating heavily, and that temperature that might just get you burned. Zoro and Sanji had to carry Luffy to his room. Kaya was already there preparing some medicine and first aid kit. Hours after Luffy fainted, Kaya still couldn't distinguish what ails in their captain. Like always, Nami, their navigator, commanded the ship on where it was headed or if a storm will come about. Nojiko was always at her side, so was Usopp as the two of them hoist the sails. Frankie was now steering the ship, a ship he knew very well. Tashigi was beside his captain, holding his burning hand. She was starting to cry at the sight of his beloved captain. Kuina was at the door, her arms crossed under her chest, as the crew was helpless to help Luffy. "Take off his clothes," Zoro said, and so they did. Everyone inside the room was shocked. The back of Luffy a huge wound, the wound he got from battling Mihawk. There the wound looked like an alien spawn. Sure, they bandaged him, but they never gave him anything as he too said he didn't feel anything. Kaya did whatever she could to kill the infection, but alas, nothing worked. Tashigi has started calling Marineford in a desperate attempt for help. They were answered by Hina, who said that an island called Drum isn't that far from their current location. And so the crew sailed to an island called Drum. Captain Hina said that it was recently attacked by a pirate named Marshal Teach, and some Marines are also on their way, including Black Cage. Hina Tashigi announced to everyone who's outside. They were all worried for their sick captain. ever so energetic and free now, lying on his bed with a sickness they do not know. It's been a day since they've changed their course towards Drum. As they arrived, they saw the island was thrashed and burned to the ground. Marines and other group that wanted to help Drum arrived also. Dalton, a man who have survived the recent attack, told them that Blackbeard had took every doctor they knew. Only it was left, and he doesn't know if she really existed. Our king, Wapple, had abandoned the island and left us for good, Dalton said with sadness in his voice. Most of us survived, only those who fought Blackbeard died, and I was supposed to be one of them, he said, admitting that he cowardly run just so he could be with his family. You made a choice, and so did they, Tashigi said. There's nothing wrong with that, assuring that Dalton shouldn't blame himself. He smiled, though it still pained him to remember his fallen friends. Dr. Kureha was believed to be living atop that castle, he said, pointing towards the castle high above them. That was expected, Zoro said. It just had to be that high, he sighed. Somehow it was fate who decided that the castle should be built there. And so they all walked towards the castle up in the mountains. It was snowing. It was soothing as you see the snows drop slowly. They've walked towards the castle. They even got blocked by huge rabbit-like monsters which weren't a match for Tashi, Kuina, and Zoro combined. Help! They yelled, as it echoes through and out the empty castle. Please, someone needs your help, Tashigi yelled. Then a small creature came. Get of here, raccoon. As Sanji was about to kick the raccoon, it spoke. I am not a raccoon, idiot, it replied, making Sanji lose his balance and fall on the icy floor with his head first, making everyone laugh. Ah, it's so cute, Tashigi squealed, chasing what appears to be a humanoid reindeer. Chopper, I already told you not to get seen, an old woman said, sighing. What do you want, brats? Wow, she sure acts like an old woman. Please, help him, handing over Luffy and letting her see the wound on his back. Fine, but if he dies you'll be the ones who'll bury him, she said. At the operating room, she said that Luffy was even lucky to be alive in this state. The infection has spread throughout his entire system, and it's just miracle or some force that has kept him alive. Most of them were glad to hear that he was okay, save for Vivi, who still has to worry about her kingdom's situation, much more her father, the king. Night came and Luffy woke up. Everyone was inside the room he was in. They were all sleeping so peacefully, and one certain reindeer was just finishing up checking Luffy. They both said their hello, as the two of them can't sleep as well. Luffy was already asleep the whole time. He's not gonna sleep some more. And Chopper, who can't sleep because with these people in the room, plus he had to check up on Luffy from time to time. And that's why I wanted to sail the seas, Chopper said, finishing up the current topic about him wanting to see the world. But he's afraid that people will define him as a monster. But you're a reindeer, not a monster, Luffy replied. Chopper was glad to hear that there was at least someone who hasn't hated him or was freaked out by him when seeing his state. Little did the two know that a pair of old woman's eyes were watching them. Morning came and the entire crew was woken up by Luffy's joyous shouts. They've looked outside the window to see their captain playing with Chopper. Yo, he greeted them. Meet our newest crew member, he said, pointing at Chopper. And then nice to meet you, he said, stuttering. Flashback, few hours ago. Dawn came and the two continued with their talk. They'd talk about everything, their lives, their habits, just everything. Dr. Kureha came inside and sat beside Chopper. She then told that how Chopper and her friend died. It really hit the two of them. And so they've decided to help people from time to time, and though they did ask for money, it was just so they could eat something. After the long talk, Dr. Kureha said that Chopper has to move on about his friend and sail the seas like he wanted them to. Chopper was hesitant at first, sure he might have gotten over it, but what about Dr. Kureha all alone? The doctor reassured Chopper that she's gonna find a new home, together with Dalton and the townspeople that have survived, and that she's gonna be socially communicating with them as well. And with that, Chopper and the doctor promised each other that they will see each other once more. Of course, that didn't go without Chopper or her crying. Flashback ends. And so, like that, he's gonna join us, Luffy said, as if a countdown has started. 1, 2, 3, go. The women chased the cute fluffy reindeer around the snow. The crew then returned to the ship where Frankie was left to take care of. It's super cold, he yelled as he waves his hand to the arriving crew. Wear some pants. Everyone screamed, except for Luffy, who didn't mind, and Chopper, who still doesn't know Frankie. But as they near the ship, Luffy Kun, a very, very familiar voice echoed in the forever snowing island of Drum. Hina-san, Luffy said, turning his head but failed. Tashigi grabs her captain and jumps into the boat. What about Hina-san? Luffy said, but Tashigi didn't mind his words. As the ship started to sail, they heard Hina's voice. Damn you, woman. I'm gonna get you for that. She screamed at the top of her lung, earning Tashigi a smile. It was a hot afternoon and the naval crew of Monkey D. Luffy was beat by the heat they were facing. Their tongues rolled out, as they tried to breathe every cool air that rarely passes them. Fortunately and unfortunately, Sanji was the cook. Fortunately, for the girls receive a heavenly treatment from the blonde cook as he serves them with cold refreshments. Unfortunately, for the boys he kicked their weak and thirsty bodies. Nay, Sanji, please make us some too, Luffy said, with every inch of his strength left grabbing Sanji's left ankle. For some weird reason, the blonde cook hated serving them, well, not Luffy and mostly only Zoro when it's not mealtime. But this time, should he let them taste it or even give them anything but water, their supply will run dry too. How can their captain devour so much food? If he's made of rubber, it would surely make his stomach bloat. Luffy, Nami said, as she hands him her cup with her used straw in it. Thanks, the raven-haired boy replied, as he sips from the straw that Nami had just used. Tashigi, who was enjoying her own drink, didn't notice the sight in front of her. It was too late, as she saw Luffy sipping down the drink that Nami gave. Well, she could care less about the drink, but the straw was a different thing. Indirect kiss, Tashigi blurted out, making all attention towards Nami. The orange-haired woman was a bit slow, as it took her 5 seconds before she fully understood what she had just done. Tashigi pouted, while Valentine rushed towards the kitchen. Thanks, Nami, Luffy said, handing her back her cup, and with it they both used straw. Nami grabs her own cup, red from the embarrassment she'd caused herself. Now the girls are staring at her, as if daring her to drink using the straw Luffy had just used. Oh my dear sister, you are getting bolder as the days goes on, Nojiko said, standing up, smirking at the redder face of her sister. Why, you got it all wrong, she said. Well, it would have been sold if it wasn't for her stuttering. Where are you going? Nami asked, regaining her composure. Who knows? She replied back, as she climbs towards the crow's nest. God, I wish I was bold as her, Tashigi thought, for there was only one man who spends his time, or rather made the crow's nest his room. Maybe I can give it a try, Tashigi mused, as she tightens the grip of her cup. Luffy, would you still like some? She asked. Redder was her face than Nami. With the huge smile plastered on his face, it could only mean yes. Rushing towards his first mate, Luffy took the cup. Luffy! Valentine yelled out, as she burst out from the kitchen door. Taste my chocolates, she said, her voice somewhat naughty and full of evil intentions, at least for the girls. With Luffy's short attention, his eyes sparkled as Valentine came closer with her freshly made chocolates. How in Roger's name did she make chocolates that fast? The women thought. Maybe it was or should be a secret that must not be revealed. This isn't Tashigi's lucky day. Maybe it was karma after what she did to Captain Hina. Who knows? Ah, Valentine said, as for every chocolate she feeds Luffy with, the more angrier the other's face becomes. Frankie watches his so-called super youngsters fight for a boy's heart, even if he's that dense. And that's what made Frankie worried. Luffy might start a war that could end the world. These girls, there's something scary about them, some force that could never be explained. Tashigi's cool was losing it, drawing out her sword a bit, signaling Valentine to end it now or she'll end it herself. What made Valentine gulp was not the sword but the smile that Tashigi has putted on. It was disturbing, it really was. Nami draws her climate act, which was made by Usopp. A bow staff like that could manipulate the surrounding weather. When asked how is it that he was able to craft such a magnificent weapon, a genius like me always creates great stuff. Stomping his fist into his chest, proud as he'll ever be. So it was an accident then? Zoro said, well, all of them could see through the long-nosed lies. Still, if he has a knack for successful accidents, then they'll accept it any day. Kaya was clenching her fist, making it look like she was just massaging her hands, yet that bone-cracking sound was terrifying. Lucky for Valentine, the den mushy rings as it was heard from all corners of the ship. Luffy and Tashigi went inside the captain's room, not that the others were not allowed, it was just like those two are way too serious about missions like that. Nami walked towards Kuina, who was across the deck just watching the calm sea. How were you so calm when you saw what was Valentine doing? The orange-haired asked, in which Kina raised an eyebrow. I mean, you like him right? Nami said, however it wasn't a question. What are you talking about? Looking the other way, so that her red face won't be seen. I don't like him, she added. I mean, he's strong, respectful, polite, cute. I mean, dude, no loot, no. Ute. Ugh. She stuttered and stormed off in the end, leaving Nami a sly smile. Now where is our little and cute doctor? She said, probably wanting to hug Chopper again. Inside the room. Luffy, you'll assist me in capturing Lion pirates, which is being led by Kobe, Smoker said via Den Mushi. Sir, why target that kid? His bounty isn't that much, Luffy said, saying why waste time if he's not that much trouble. Even Smoker himself would let his subordinate capture that kid, should he pose no threat to them. That boy had put down 2 giants at Little Garden with Conqueror's Haki, Smoker said. Conqueror's Haki, a very rare skill, and only a few people was known to possess this kind of ability. Its powers was said to put any man whose will is weaker than yours to sleep. Though much is to learn about it, it was the only thing the world has researched for now. That ability is so rare that only 1 in a million people has it. It gives the user to dominate one's will. Like said, as of now the ability is to knock out weaker enemies, though through training one can freely dominate a single target's will or target a much more larger group. To the Marines' disadvantage, not even the admirals has this ability save Garp and Luffy when he joined the Marines. That is why he is like the rare jewel the Marine had founded, letting him do mostly what he wants when there are no orders, so that their most prized possession won't be lost or worst, rebel. Where is he? Luffy said, his voice more serious than it ever was. Alabasta. I'm also on my way there now, Smoker replied. I also have something to report, Luffy added. The young boy then explained what happened at Whiskey Peak, explaining how the princess of that kingdom is under his protection. Smoker agreed to Luffy's plan that it should be a cover mission, and not publicly. They don't want to have a war at their hands by the time they got there. Plus their main objective is capturing that pink-haired kid. With that, Luffy ended their conversation, massaging his temples. More troubles, chuckling to himself, as Tashigi gave him a friendly hug. The two of them went outside and... Show yourself, Luffy said, instantly alerting his allies as they all formed up a semicircular formation. Since the wall is at their end, they didn't need to protect their backs. Glad that every one of his friends are on deck as they managed to quickly create a defensive formation. Well, my little brother, now a captain. That voice, so familiar yet so different from what Luffy has on his mind. Landing on the deck of the ship, you've gotten strong, you know, being able to detect me with your haki, the man said. He had an orange cowboy hat, large red prayer beads that acts like his necklace, blue short, topless, raven-haired like the captain of this ship. Ace. The young captain replied, his eyes narrowed at his big brother's sight. The two siblings might be far away, but they knew all too well that each of them was keeping an eye out for each other. Luffy with the Marines' intel, and Ace with Whitebeard's spies and newspapers. Yo, how long has it been? He said with a smirk on his face. What are you doing here? If you plan to hurt my free... Oops. Let's not go there. I'm just simply asking if you've seen a guy named Kobe. You know, a pirate? The older man replied. Luffy's silence means that his big brother should explain. Well, Gramps has taken an interest for him. Not G-chan but WH. I know, he replied coldly, yet for some reason there was caring in his voice. Well, it was stupid of me to come here, he said, chuckling as he stood on the rail of the ship. You know that we can't be brothers anymore, not with this life. Luffy nodded. Sad as he may be, there was no other choice. He's a Marine and his brother a pirate. Fire Fist Ace, 2nd Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates. A very dangerous man. White Wolf Luffy, rank, captain, elite amongst his fellow Marines besides his young age, rumored to be the next hero. Brothers of Black and White. Luffy and the gang arrived at Rainbase, a city in Alabasta popular for its gambling industry. It had survived many droughts. Money was probably its medicine. An underground organization called Baroque Works, controlled by a man called Mr. Zero, is attempting to start a war where he'll use both sides for his own and personal gain. A man who must no longer walk this world. They have drawn too much attention as they walk towards the biggest casino in the city. Wearing that Marine uniform has more disadvantage than they've thought. Vivi gasped a bit enough for them to realize the dagger on her neck. Weird thing is that the dagger came from an arm that sprouted on Vivi's back. "If you would please kindly follow me," a feminine voice said. Her voice was full of maturity in it. "And what would you define as a woman?" "There, a female so beautiful." Sanji lost his consciousness. She was the same person who blew up the ship Vivi's friend was on when they were still at Whiskey Peak. Luffy, not wanting to risk anything, he decided that following her was the best option right now. He knew all too well that their chances is getting slimmer as they neared their unknown destination. They were locked up in a steel cage. Without their weapons they are rendered useless. Though Luffy tried Rankyaku, Tempest Kick, the steel was as hard as it was cold. "I'm sorry if I've put you in that position, Captain." A man walked towards them, wearing a brown long jacket, and that scar on his face. "Crocodile," Luffy growled. "I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave you now." "I still got plans." Laughing his ass off, he destroyed his aquarium as the huge, very huge crocodile starts to swim underneath their cage. Minutes had passed and the water was now on their waistline, and if it wasn't for that white smoke they'd all be crying right now. "Smoker! Hurry!" Luffy screamed, forgetting that White Chase has a higher rank than him now. Still they were in danger, so he'd let this one go. Smoker volunteered to find the now escaping Kobe. As soon as rumors of war had spread, the intel on Kobe was that he was leaving the island. Luffy, Tashigi, and Kuina separate themselves from the group. They were Team Crocodile Hunters, while the rest was Team Bring Vivi Back to Papa. Yes, Luffy was the one who planned and named everything. The trio started to follow Crocodile's path. Unfortunately, what they saw was just sand. Luffy looked back only to see a half-materialized crocodile swinging his hook at the clueless Tashigi. Realizing Luffy's reaction, Tashigi instantly draws her blade and faces her opposite. However, that hook was only inches away for her chest. She closed her eyes, expecting the very end of her life. She felt a bump as she landed on the hot desert. Looking up, blood drips all over her face, as the sight she saw was something she'll never forget. Luffy blocked that swing at Tashigi. Crocodile's hook had pierced through his left abdomen and the tip of the hook outside his right, leaving a gaping hole as Crocodile releases Luffy. "Typical, yet it always work," he said, smirking as he vanishes while Kuina swings her sword desperately trying to hit the Logia type. "Luffy!" The two women screamed as they knelt before the lifeless body of Luffy. Thanks for watching this video. You really enjoy this video? Like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow Jinouga for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.